Welcome all. Thank you for coming. Delighted to have you here, and a shout out to the school district for making this room available to us for this village purpose, a whole lot more comfortable for everybody. And a shout out to PCTV. Shane is upstairs in the balcony. For those who may be interested, this whole event is being recorded, and it will be available in an on-demand webcast at pctv76.org within a few days for anyone who might want to pick it up or who tires of the evening and wants to pick up the rest of it from the privacy of their own home, or for folks who didn't get a chance to come. This certainly is the first of what will be a number of discussions, and anyone who isn't here ought not feel that they have missed their opportunity to weigh in. So a couple of logistics that you may already be aware of. We asked folks who were not going to come, or potentially were going to come but didn't wish to speak, to send questions in advance, and we have a stack of those. Anyone who's in the room here who would like to ask a question but prefers not to speak can write it out, and we have a small stack of those. And folks who would like to speak are welcome to do so. We ask you to fill out your name on a card. Courtney's right at the entrance at the back of the room, and the reason for that simply is so that we can call you in order and we don't end up asking you to wait in line, just a little more comfortable way to go. So we're going to start with a presentation that sort of sets some context for this discussion, what we know, what we've all been thinking about, and then open up the floor to all of you to offer comments. I know that most of you know us, but let me make sure you do. Paul Alvarez, Village Trustee. Nicole Asquith, Trustee. Peter Scheer, I'm the Mayor. David Vinjamuri, Trustee. And Michael Peppard. I am happy to report, as I have been with this entire board, to report that we have pretty good geographic diversity across the village in terms of where we all live, and a reasonable age diversity. I regret to report that I have turned into the old guy, but here I am. So just by way of context, I've lived here in Pleasantville for 36 years. My day job is on Wheeler Avenue and has been so for 22 years. So I have some perspective that I add to this mix, and you can see if you agree or not. Anybody else have an initial comment to make? And then we'll jump to our presentation, try to go through it pretty quickly. I'll ask folks not to interrupt at the moment. You have questions, comments about that, you can come forward and do so. Shane, was there a possibility of reducing the lights a little bit?
No.
Okay, great. So hopefully you can all see. Here's the sequence of events for what we're going to talk about tonight. Information about current projects, things that are going on in the village, population trends, property tax and budget, planning, zoning, and development, both how that works and who's responsible for it, what's changing around us in a world that is rapidly changing, opportunities and challenges, which you have a sort of summary of in the sheet we handed out, and then we'll invite all of you to comment. So a little bit of a tag team, various members of the board picking up various pieces of it. So just for starters, I wanted to buzz through a few things that are going on, partly because we have a captive audience, but partly to remind you of the many things that are going on, which dovetail in some cases with development and also feed into the popularity that this community has, and as a result has produced what we have all seen lately, rising property values and great interest in development. So just want to run through a few projects. I hope most of you have seen the work that's going on Manville Road. Finally have shovels in the ground, although we're going to stop for the winter, on a project that is about 2/3 funded by a New York State grant that is going to significantly improve the pedestrian conditions on Manville Road. We've been talking about this in various ways for about 10 years. Got that state grant, I think, 4 years ago, and struggling our way through it. But finally, the Burns side of Manville from Farrow's gas station down to Wheeler has been done, and we'll be doing a similar treatment all the way to Grant Street on both sides. I think it's a pretty significant game changer. So Same story. We are at the moment waiting for the Department of Health to give us back comments on the new pool project, replacing the existing pool up on Lake Street, which is approaching the end of its reasonable life. Lots of you may not be aware of a project that at the moment is nascent and hasn't been fully vetted and certainly hasn't been fully funded, but a pretty exciting project to make some improvements to the Mount Pleasant Library, both the main branch down the street here on Romer and also the branch over by the Mount Pleasant Pool and Recreation Center. Pretty exciting changes, and I encourage you to take a look at the library website if you're interested in what that might all look like. This project reminds you of a discussion we've been having since 2018, probably, talking about the possibility of creating a civic space on Memorial Plaza. These are draft images that we have shown in the past and will be showing again as we make our way around the question of what parts of this are realistic and what parts are not. But the core piece of that is to try to take the War Monument end of Memorial Plaza, the part near Manville Road, and turn it into a civic space, and finally to put the war monuments in a more respectful condition than sitting there on a traffic island. You all know what a vibrant place this world, our world is. We have great commerce going on downtown, although rapidly changing. We are now widely known, I hear about it all the time in my wanderings, as a center for arts, a center for education. We've got things like the Music Festival, Arc Stages, the distinguished schools that are operated here by the Pleasantville Union Free School District, our adjacency to PACE, all kinds of things that are, like much of our lives, a richer, broader, more impressive array of stuff than communities of our size can typically muster. I just wanted to remind folks, obviously a significant engine of our downtown development over the last 20 years has been the now 20-plus-year-old Burns Film Center. Worth noting, if you probably can't see it too clearly, but in the lower right corner, that's what it looked like before all this happened. And honestly, some of that was replicated around our downtown, blessedly through a whole series of events, including the arrival of the Burns. A lot of stuff has changed. So obviously sports and recreation are a core piece of what we all do. One of the reasons families and adults look forward to living here. So it's a pretty good package that you can live here in some version of small town living, as close as we are to the train and to New York City, with resources like the Rockefeller State Park so close to us, and such a range of services and opportunities. So that's a shout out to all of you who have been part of this for a short time or for a long time. Paul, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Hello? Okay. All right. All right, there we go. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Alvarez. I moved from Ecuador to Pleasantville back in when I was 9 years old, so about 30 years ago. So I grew up in Pleasantville. It's kind of surreal being in this room in this kind of setting, but I'm excited about it. What I wanted to present is specifically looking at the population of Pleasantville by looking at every 10 years specifically. If you go back to looking at 1900s, you can see there's about 1,204 people, and going all the way up to the last time that this was measured, which was in 2020, there was about 7,513. As you can see, from 2010 to 2020, there was only an increase of about 500 people more. So I think it's important to note that as we are seeing a lot of change and a lot of different construction that's happening, the trend that we've been seeing in the population in Pleasantville has not been that significant over the last really 20 years, if you really look at it. So it's something interesting to note. Obviously, when the next time that we measure this will be in 2030, we can see where we're at that point, but just in general, in the trend that we've seen, it hasn't jumped up that much significantly. Next slide. In relation to then the population of the enrollment actually of the school, you can see by going back at the years that we're presenting right there. Okay, so that's, if you can look back, we've looked since 1977. Enrollment was at about 1,563. And if you look now, the most recent that we have as of 2022, we're at 1,634. So there hasn't been an increase. It's been going up and down. Just for me and for my interest, when I started school here in Pleasantville, the enrollment was 1,144. When I graduated Pleasantville High School in 2001, there was 1,643, and currently there's 1,634. So as you can see, the numbers go up and down, but it hasn't been a trend that has been just going up. It kind of goes up and down. So I thought that was something interesting to look at. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Asquith, for those of you who don't know me. I've been on the board since 2017. And just to make a couple of comments in relation to that, I think Pleasantville is somewhat unusual in my senses compared to some of the communities around us in terms of the population sort of consistency. You know, if you compare it, for instance, with Mount Pleasant or with Westchester County, there you do see a much more significant increase in population, whereas here that is less the case. I'm just going to make a few comments about the budget, which may seem tangential, but it actually does sort of dovetail with the questions around development. One of the questions that has come up in various discussions is, you know, for example, with the Girl Scout building that is currently for sale, is why couldn't the village buy that building and convert it into a new rec department or something like that? And believe me, we would all love to do that. However, we are a village of 7,500 people approximately, and our budget is not that large. And so the cost of something like that, which was estimated to be about $10 million, would represent the bulk of an annual budget for us. A few figures here to give you a rough idea. So our budget is carved into three pieces. We have a water fund, a refuse fund, and a general fund. The general fund pays for the vast majority of village services. So in our current operating budget, it's at $17.5 million. The property taxes for this budget, which is about, pays for about 70% of it, is currently at $12.2 million. We have, I'm sorry. I need to look at my notes. It makes more sense than looking at the slide. Sorry about that. Okay, so the next statistic is to give you a sense of the burden that additional spending puts on us as taxpayers. So the example is if we have an increase of 1% to the general fund, which would be about $175,000, that would result in roughly a 1.4 tax increase for each of us individually. So just to give you an idea that, you know, what, you know, in the scale of things seems like a relatively small amount of money, particularly if you're talking about buying real estate and things like that, has the potential to put a real burden on taxpayers. So we're operating within a pretty tight kind of window that way. The village tax rate in a 7-year period has had an average annual increase of 1.2%. You know, you may wonder, why does it have to go up at all? And, you know, part of it is, of course, things like inflation, which we're seeing recently. It also has to do with the fact that we have a unionized workforce with whom we enter into long-term contracts, which puts us at regular increases for salaries, increase healthcare costs, and things like that. So these are things that are very much not in our control. Okay. What else did I want to add quickly? Also, just to point out, we have a fixed amount of a tax levy for each year. So when we have new people or new households that come onto the tax roll, that's not just new money that we're raking in, since there is a fixed amount for the tax levy that will be collected in a given year. So if we have more households paying into the tax levy, that means it decreases the tax burden overall. And then one just little comment I wanted to make with respect to development, which I don't know if all of you are aware of, is that when we do, and this is not an argument in favor of development or against it for that matter, but just a useful piece of information, when we do have new development, one of the things that comes with that is a recreation fee. This speaks to some of the questions that we got, which is $5,000 per single family home and $2,500 per apartment. So right now, that money has been allocated to the pool design. You saw a picture earlier of the new pool that we are working on. In the past, it's been used for things like the new bathrooms and the concession stand on Parkway Field. And we currently have about $400,000 in the recreation fee fund from development, and we're going to be using it to replace playgrounds as well. So if more questions come up about the budget, we can answer those as they come up, but that's probably enough information for now.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm going to buzz through a bunch of slides here regarding planning and zoning, and probably each one of them could warrant a meeting in and of itself. We're not going to go into any great detail. Happy to meet with folks or small groups or larger groups at some future moment, but I just wanted to sort of give everybody at least a common set of information. A lot of stuff bouncing around on social media, and I think there's an opportunity for everybody to have a common set of info. So the image you see up on the screen right now is our current zoning map. Each of those colors represents a different zoning category, and although you obviously can't read it at this level, the legend in the corner identifies each of those zones. On the handout we gave out, we included a link to the online zoning code. If anybody is interested in digging into that further, that zoning code identifies all of the zoning categories, and it also identifies what is allowed in each of those categories. To the right, you see the cover of our most recent updated master plan that was done in 2017. Also included on that resource list at the bottom of the handout is the web link to take you to not only our current master plan, but also the master plans that have existed over a long period of time back into the 50s. So you have to be a little bit of a civics geek, but if you're interested, it is very, very interesting reading to see how the village has morphed and to see how people's expectations about what we ought to have morphed. But just to be clear, we have a master plan that was updated in 2017 as a result of a very detailed process. There's a roughly 200-page document available on the web, which you can take a look at. And I honestly encourage you to do it. Somebody posted on the web a homemade summary of our master plan, which may or may not be accurate. I haven't dug into it. But the piece I would encourage you to do is take a look at that online. I don't think you need to read it all, but if you buzz through it quickly, you'll get a sense for the level of detail and the categories of information that led to the decisions that were made. So zoning and planning matters fall into the purview of three different boards. The village board, the folks you see sitting here, your elected board, 5 members. We are the legislative board, and we are the people who are responsible for the zoning code. If the zoning code is to be changed, the analysis of that with the assistance of our professionals and ultimately a vote to change the zoning code would come from us. Second player is our planning commission, a 7-member group, and that includes also the architecture review board, which we folded into the planning commission a few years back. The planning commission handles site plans and subdivisions and building reviews. The word site plans is really not a big enough word to describe what goes into it. Some folks have said, hey, is all this happening without any analysis? It is certainly not happening without any analysis. When folks come to the Planning Commission with a proposal ranging from a modest residential site plan, a subdivision of property, all the way up to a project as big as the one going on at 70 Memorial, there's a very detailed process. Part of it is required by what's called the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and it is all documented in sequence. Traffic studies are done when the Planning Commission feels they're important, impact studies of all kinds, leading up to an ultimate decision to accept or deny or to request the applicant to make some changes. Lastly, we have a zoning board of appeals. That's a 5-member board, and their rights and responsibilities are outlined in New York state law. Those are the folks that some of you may have gone to when you seek a variance from the zoning code. For residential properties, it's often a matter like a setback for a garage or an addition or something of that kind. But you can go to a zoning board and seek what's called an area variance, meaning I want to be a little bigger or a little closer to the edge or whatever it might be, or what's called a use variance, where, for example, you might say, I have a property in a zone that allows X, but I want to do Y, which is not permitted. Use variances, I might add, are extremely difficult to get, and our zoning board has a set of guidelines that they're required to follow, and I think have followed them in a very careful and consistent manner. Some years back, we changed the application process so that applicants of any kind, commercial or residential, who envision they may need a variance must first start with the Planning Commission, because in many cases, the planning review that the Planning Commission goes through is something that can revise and in some cases eliminate the need for a variance. At the point at which the Planning Commission believes that they have proposed modifications to the applicant and those have either been accepted or not, the applicant goes back to the zoning board and seeks whatever variance they might need. They typically would then be back to planning having achieved that. But some folks have asked, how do we go about changing the zoning code? The way we go about changing the zoning code is this board would do it, and if folks in the community have identified things they feel ought to change, or if we identify things we feel ought to change, here's where it happens, and we would and will engage a very deliberative but also very participatory process. Also bouncing around on the web have been some folks talking about a moratorium. New York state law allows communities to establish a moratorium. There are a bunch of guidelines for how those can be used. They can't be used simply to say, stop, slow down. They can be used to say, okay, we think something may need to change in our zoning code, and we want to freeze some aspect of development for a period of time while we review that. A couple of people have suggested to me, can't we just have a 5-year moratorium on no new downtown construction with the idea that we'd see what all happens? So I understand where that's coming from. That's not legal, because you can't simply take a private property owner's property and say, hey, we're freezing it for 5 years. So more on that as we bounce through this a little bit, but that's sort of the preliminary lay of the land. So as most of you know.
Peter, real quick too, can you explain if these three different boards, if they work together in any way at all?
So the zoning board is largely independent, and there have been certainly plenty of cases around New York State where a claim of an attempt to influence a zoning board one way or the other has led to a lawsuit. The village board and the planning commission engage one another, and we have a required referral, not that it would be necessarily required because we would do it anyway. When we're making a significant change or proposing a zoning change or something of the sort, we refer that to the planning commission and they give us back their comments. I can report way back when a member of the planning commission, I, on any number of occasions, have appeared at a planning commission meeting for a conversation about some matter that was in play, either a matter that is potentially going to lead to a zoning change or simply a discussion about how things go. As I already mentioned, planning looks at proposals before they're released to go to zoning, and so that's the mechanism by which those two players work together. And I can say that certainly historically, at various points, our building department, our planning commission, and our zoning board have highlighted back to the village board issues that they think might warrant clarification in our zoning code or a potential change, and those have led to those changes at various points. So, as you already know, we've seen 4 significant projects either completed or on the way right now, and it's just interesting to be reminded of what they are and how they came about. The Toll Brothers project, 68 townhomes on the site of the former Baker property, commercial property. That site, for those of you who might not have lived here then, was the site of two low-slung two-story commercial office buildings that dated back to the 50s. They had degraded into nothingness and were essentially empty. A whole bunch of problems with the site. In the end, Toll Brothers purchased the property and sought a zoning change from property that had been zoned commercial and which had, I want to say, 400 or 500 surface parking spaces that in the years prior to Toll's acquisition were empty, but way, way back were very busy. We essentially allowed the zoning that exists for Foxwood to roll over the top of the hill and create the guideline for the development at Toll Brothers. So that's 68 units, 61 market rate, 7 affordable. Those are ownership units that people have bought, and to my knowledge, they are all now occupied. 39 Washington, the site of the former Try and Buy, 23 rental apartments, again, 23 apartments, 2 affordable. 70 Memorial Plaza, that's the project next to the post office. More on that in a minute. 79 rental apartments there. And then the Depew Street project between Depew and the Sawmill, the site of the former LaDuca Auto, 71 rental apartments. That is a site that had gone on the market after LaDuca departed and was found to be a brownfield site because of significant contamination. So the result is the project that is ongoing now. Again, we have in our zoning code the requirement that any new development that provides 10 or more residences requires a 10% set aside for affordable units based on the HUD guidelines, making them affordable to folks at 80% of the average median income for a unit of that size. Two things that are floating around, 444 Bedford Road, that's the 5-story building at the corner of Wheeler and Bedford, the former Chase Manhattan Bank site. That 5-story building is pre-existing non-compliant. Our entire downtown, with the single exception I'll describe in a moment, is limited and has been for a very long time to a maximum of 3 stories. That building was built before that zoning existed, so it's pre-existing non-compliant 5 stories. The owner, a longstanding owner, has owned that building for 40 or 45 years, has now lost their downstairs bank tenant. Some years back, a generation back certainly, bank spaces were a hot commodity and new banks would have appeared in no time. In the current world where banks are shrinking their retail market, there appears no great likelihood that a bank would occupy that space. That owner has come forward with a preliminary proposal, which I believe he has now filed an application for, but it hasn't yet been reviewed by the Planning Commission other than a pre-application discussion that happened a month or so ago for a project that would build on the parking lot, which is next to the building on Bedford, which is owned by that property, to provide on-site parking and turn the upper floors of that building and the new construction into residential. The other site that's in discussion, and we don't know what will happen, is a very large site up behind Foxwood condominiums. If you go up Campus Drive next to the tennis courts and continue up the hill, I'm not encouraging you to do that, it's private property, but at the top of the hill is a very large building, a 140,000 square foot commercial building that has been there since the 70s. It is the remnants of what was a long and interesting story, which I won't bore you with at the moment, of the evolution of the Hiram Edward Manville estate. Result of this is that for the last 20 or 25 years, that site has been owned by the Bank of New York as an emergency backup center. Very, very large building, hundreds of parking spaces, 2 or 3 people working there, with a single exception of a couple of months around 9/11. That building has been largely empty. Bank of New York determined they didn't need it. They put it on the open market. It has been sold, and it is now on the market. And we know that various entities have been looking at it, some possibly for commercial use, some possibly for residential use. A residential use would require a zoning change, but a commercial use potentially would be dramatically more impactful to that neck of the woods than obviously the existing largely dormant site has been. So that's another piece that is in play and that we are thinking about.
Yeah, can I just sort of reiterate that? So that particular piece is currently zoned campus office, which means that's what it could be used for as of right now. So the question that we're kind of thinking about is, should it be rezoned, and if so, how? Can I just ask about the previous site that you asked about? Would that require a variance?
Which site?
The 444?
I can't say for sure. It is my belief that the owners of 444 Bedford, that's the bank building, have presented that what they are proposing is zoning compliant. I don't know that we've vetted that yet, but I believe that that is their preliminary position. One interesting piece about that is that we have a requirement that any new residential requires on-site parking, and that has been obviously important to all of us so that we don't add to the public realm responsibility at public expense for private parking. In our downtown A1 district, in a significant piece of it, we have an overlay area that says retail uses in our downtown do not have a parking requirement, so you could establish a store without on-site parking. Some of that is just the reality that so many of our storefronts don't have and couldn't provide on-site parking. Restaurants, food service activities do have a parking requirement. So, it's interesting, as perhaps some of you have thought yourselves, that big vaulted bank space is probably hard to reconfigure, and some folks have said, wow, it would make a great restaurant. If someone were to propose that to be a restaurant, that would have a significant parking requirement, and one that it isn't clear could be achieved on site. So that would be one of the tripwires in our zoning that would say, hey, this would be too impactful and can't be addressed or not. Stay tuned on all of that, and certainly the applicant is not at the moment, I think, coming forward with a proposed tenant for that first floor space. So I wanted to zero in a little bit. I showed you the cover for the 2017 master plan. Again, I encourage you to take a look on the web at that master plan. The result of that was a decision on the part of the board that we acted upon to change one section of our A1 district into a 4-story section instead of the 3 stories, which is the condition that existed before and which continues to exist everywhere else except this one block. So if you can see, I've highlighted that block a little bit in yellow, maybe a little bit hard to see, but it's the block that includes the post office. It's bounded by Memorial Plaza, Manville Road, Cooley Street, and Bedford Road. So that one block is zoned to allow 4 stories. Why is that? That is the result of a pretty extended review process way back when, 2015, 2016, 2017, looking at the condition that existed there. Many of you will remember the site of 70 Memorial, the new big apartment building that's being built right now, was formerly a pretty big building on top of a pretty big rock. That building had devolved into nothingness, had been literally empty for quite a while. Very, very difficult to reconfigure it. No elevator, a very small amount of parking, and the only access to it was up the railroad tie steps up the mountain. So in a world of ADA access, in a world where the Village of Pleasantville says, you can't change that use to something else, certainly not to residential, without building parking, that building and its entire site was sort of locked in stasis. So what we hope to do, and which I think was achieved, was to establish an economic capacity for somebody to purchase that property, which was starting to fall down around itself, and redevelop it, providing enough economic return that somebody could take down the building, take down the rock, and dig down to provide parking. So the result of that is that zoning change is what you see here. On the left, that building on the rock that existed in 2016. On the right, the rendering of the building that has mostly taken shape, but which will be completed in 2023. A number of pieces are delivered to us for that. One of them is what's going to be a really very, very nice landscaped walkway along the side of this building from Memorial Plaza down to Cooley Street, which is on private property built at the developer's expense, but with a permanent public right of pedestrian passage, so that instead of making our way past, squeezing our way past the post office trucks, there will now be a very nice and graceful way to get from Memorial Plaza down to Cooley Street to the restaurant Chatterbox down to Key Food, that whole area, a very big positive step. In addition, Cooley Street is going to be pushed through as a full two-way street at the developer's expense. For a long time, you couldn't get through it all. When we purchased the Lane Plumbing site, more on that in a moment, you could sneak your way through the lot to get from Bedford to Manville or vice versa, but it is going to be restored as a full two-way street, a condition that hasn't existed, I think, in a century or more. And that, I think, is doing two important things. One, it provides another way to get between Bedford and Manville instead of always doing it at Memorial Plaza or at Wheeler. And the other is it will create a new street fund. All of the parking for the 70 Memorial Plaza building enters to underground parking on Cooley Street. There's no vehicular access at all on Memorial Plaza. So that leads me to a proposal we showed the other night at our Village Board work session, and that is this. Those of you who may be old enough to recall Lane Plumbing will remember that the site behind the post office was formerly the site of the Lane Plumbing Company. Years back, a very, very busy retail and wholesale plumbing supply company with a number of buildings and a former lumberyard warehouse full of plumbing supplies and boilers and pipes and the like. Lane Plumbing eventually ceased to operate, and back in 2010, the village bought that property for $1,037,000 in 2010, and we turned it into a 48-car parking lot in order to get control of that site in village hands and also to provide much-needed parking at the time. We've been in conversation for quite some while with the developer of the adjacent 70 Memorial, and we have arrived at a circumstance where we have an offer on the table that I think the board is very, very much interested in, which would have us sell that Lane Plumbing lot, as we have come to call it, to the developer of the adjacent property. And here's what would happen. We would be paid a purchase price for that property. Can't divulge that yet. We haven't got a signed contract, but a very significant amount of money, not dramatically dissimilar from what we paid for it. And that developer would then build a 4-story building, the building you see in this picture, and the first floor would be parking, and that parking would be given back to the village permanently. About 40 spaces as compared to the current 48. So the circumstance we're confronted with is the opportunity to sell this property, gain the revenue associated with it, get back 40 of the 48 parking spaces in what would then be a grade level but covered parking lot owned by the village forever, and return this property to the tax rolls. That obviously is a subject that will be of concern to some folks. I can tell you we've looked at it very carefully, and I can at least speak for myself to say that I think it is an opportunity that we should seize. But we'll be interested to hear what all of you folks have to say. Oh, yeah, sorry, thank you. The piece I forgot to remind you of is that central to that whole discussion is that that property would be sold, if we sold it, with the deed restriction that it can never be used for residential, only for office space. So there'd be no potential addition of residential downtown. I will say that whether that plan, if we were to sign the contract, could ever come to fruition would be dependent on a zoning variance, and that zoning variance would simply be a variance that says instead of providing on-site parking, this owner-operator would be permitted to provide valet parking in the adjacent parking lot that he already owns for the office space, because, of course, he's giving all the parking that exists to the village. So I think there are a whole series of wins attached to that. Obviously, everything that one imagines has an advantage and a disadvantage, but we're confronted with the potential to sell this and to get the building you see in this image. So that's a quick summary, maybe not so quick, but I pass this on to David to talk about our changing world.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, I'm David Vingemore. I've been on the board since 2018. My day job is actually a space planner. I work on the design and construction of public libraries around the United States. One of the very interesting parts of that job is that I have had the opportunity to work with towns and municipalities from Westchester County, Morris, Bergen County, New Jersey, to suburban Oregon, Chicago, Milwaukee, Madison, and other towns. And one of the things I can tell you is that you can have a planned town, you can have real estate anywhere, but if you want a walking village, it's a very specific and very complicated equation because it requires a vibrant downtown. And right now, probably the most important thing that's happening nationally, one of the biggest trends, is that villages around the country are dying. And nobody really knows, and I'm going to very much say that we don't know either, and I'll tell you why in just a second. Nobody really knows how to maintain a vibrant downtown in an era where Amazon is killing retail throughout the country. That is one of the biggest challenges you can ask. We have an amazing village bookstore. We have some amazing retailers in the village, and it is hard. It is really hard. And so the master plan that exists, the last iteration in 2017, was really an attempt to create a vibrant downtown that would make this feel like a walking village. Now, it may have been wrong, we don't know. But everything that's been done has really been done to that plan. There's an even more important set of things that have happened since then, particularly during the pandemic. And thinking about those, I think, is really important because the reality is this is a good time for this meeting, and it's very unlikely that everything that we've done is the right thing given all the changes that have happened in the world in the last couple of years. So, for instance, we know downtown in 2019 we had a long list of people who were waiting to get a parking space at Memorial Plaza so they could drive their car there, park, and go into the city. This year, I think we cleared all of the people who were residential on that list. We've gone to the businesses who want space for their employees, and still, if you go to Memorial Plaza during the day, you'll see that there's a lot of empty parking spaces. Our parking condition has dramatically changed in the last couple of years. The other thing that's happening around the county and around the country is, I don't know if any of you have read, but for the first time, we are not growing as a nation in terms of our birth rate, and there are towns throughout the county who are experiencing declining school populations. As horrifying as expanding school populations can be, I can tell you, having lived in I grew up in New York, but I was born in New York, but I grew up about an hour from here in Connecticut, living in a town where they had to close a succession of schools, that is a gut-wrenching thing to have happen. And it's a really complex calculus. It's not just having good schools that determines who moves here and who puts children into school, because they have to be able to afford to live here with a family as well. So it's a really tricky business. Our traffic and parking patterns are continually changing. For sure, it's a nightmare. I have 3 kids, one in Bedford Road School and 2 in the middle school, and I'm driving several times a day on the same corridor that gives all of you a heartache, and I feel the same thing, and it's no fun. I've also often end up driving into the village, at rush hour. So there's no question, we don't know. Some of that in the last year or two clearly had to do with the sawmill, but there's a lot that's had to do with our development. We've got 2 enormous projects, one of which none of us contemplated. It was just done as of right on Depew Street, that happened at the same time, that are going to complete construction in the next, 6 months or so. And we don't know what it's going to look like after that. So there's a huge amount of unknown in this. We need to understand, and I think it will help for us to hear from you, not just tonight, but going into the future, how you want to use the downtown area of the village. What goods and services? We can't require retail to be there or pay a retailer to be there, But if we know, as we're crafting zoning, we can make sure zoning is friendly to the kinds of retail and restaurants and services that you want. But it's a long process. A lot of what's happening now started 20 years ago, and it took that long. And we're not, there's, I think, a sense on social media that we're some kind of master manipulators living in multi-million-dollar mansions that have plotted the future of Pleasantville. A lot of what we're experiencing is the result of decisions that were made before anybody but probably Peter was on the board, and some even well before him. Yeah, I'm giving them all the responsibility.
Or not on the board at all.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead.
let me just add to that. Most of these decisions are because people who own property have confronted a change in their lives. They're retiring. They want to sell. A property falls into disrepair and needs to be revived. A major tenant disappears. Or in the case of the Bank of New York, that massive property behind Foxwood, it's no longer useful for the use that existed. So none of that has anything to do with any of us. It has to do with the changing circumstances of people who own property, and that's what's driving them to come forward and say, hey, here's what we'd like to do. So,
And the last thing I'd just say is that we are confronting both the desire, in some cases, and the need to make significant capital investments in the village. So in some number of years from now, we're going to have to spend $10 million-ish on water capacity on
the tanks.
on the tanks. That's not an optional. When we have to do that, we will have to do that. It's a huge amount of money. You saw the size of our budget. That will have a big impact on us. We'd like to improve the village pool. We'd like to do other things too. Having a vibrant downtown makes it possible for us to pay for the debt that allows us to do these things. Michael Peppard is going to talk about our opportunities and our
Then we'll get to
challenges.
Hi everyone, I'm Michael Peppard, and I'm the new person on the board in the middle of my first term. I'm also the person who's lived here the least long, I suppose, looking down the line. This is my 8th year in Pleasantville, and I love living here. I absolutely love living here. And I wanted to serve in local government because I see such great potential that can align with the great history of this place that you all have built and that boards before us have built. In local government, we see very closely the balance between the freedoms and flourishing of households and the public common goods. And we see them up close. And I think that's why you're all here tonight, is because we feel the tensions that arise when the tensions between those private property rights and those common goods that we all need. And that's political theory 101, so I'm here for it. I'm a professor, I'm a commuter on the train, and so as a professor, you may not be surprised that I have a handout. I brought a handout here, so if you haven't got one, find one somewhere around the room. This is a handout that is the result of listening. So one thing I've been doing for my first year on the board is listening at the Black Cow, listening at Foley's, listening at BRS Pickup. I have one kid in all 3 schools, so I've probably stopped many of you and asked questions about how you see the village. And one way I've been phrasing it is, what do you see are the opportunities of our village in this period of development, and what do you see as the challenges of development in this moment? And so the handout is really not so much the vision of any one person, but it's the vision of everyone in the town from the product of listening. If it doesn't look right to you, then I want to know that. We want to know that. If something you think needs more emphasis or less emphasis, then we want to know that too. So again, thank you for being here. And without further ado, we will turn it over to
all of you.
To the mayor and questions.
So as I said at the outset, we've got a stack of cards here with folks who said they would like to speak. I'm going to call out the person to speak and then the person who's next, so you can be in 3-point position and we can avoid the need for anybody to have to wait too long. If you decide you want to speak, Courtney can take your name and we'll add you to the stack. We do ask that people keep their comments down to 3 minutes or so, so that everybody gets a chance to speak. If you are asking a question, we'll try to respond, but in really a short summary form. Doubtless every question could take much longer, and we can come back to you and will, but we are happy to hear what people think, questions, comments, or whatever. So the first speaker is Mariana Cocho, 107 Bedford Road. I'll call out your address so we don't have to repeat it. And then the next speaker is going to be Nancy Conforti and Pete Jacobson.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, Mariana Cocho. I've been here, I got you by 2 years. We moved here in '84. We've been here 38 years. So I'm a veteran of the Zoning Board of Appeals and a veteran of the school board. I have to say that we moved here primarily for the schools and for the sidewalks. So we were moving up from Brooklyn. The changes I've seen have been by and large positive. I have to say that, just to get that off the table. My concerns, by the way, vibrancy in the village is something that I think we all want. Like, we can't be a village without that. I have no concerns with most of the development that's coming along. I have a concern because we live in the old village, which is the part of town that experiences, I think, the most pressure from traffic. We live on the corner of Bedford and Manville Road. If you know what that is, you can imagine. We have trucks rumbling by every day. I have to reposition all the things that are hanging on the wall. So I'm very concerned, particularly about the property behind Foxwood. I think that in terms of the old village, which is a charm, you all know, it's a charming place. There are a couple of, and it's developed very nicely, a couple of restaurants there. You can sit outside in the summer. You all know it. It's lovely. And we would love to see that somehow be preserved. And I know there are issues. I know we can't tell private developers what to do, but we can do some very careful zoning, maybe. I have to look at the zoning plan again, the master plan. So that's my concern. My concern is the old village, particularly. And I have another concern. I have a concern about rental properties and not having enough affordable rental. Some of you may know, my husband and I have just sponsored a Ukrainian refugee family. Their two older children are in BRS and in the middle school. They love it here. It's wonderful. They have no jobs yet. They have no transportation, so they can walk to school. Sidewalks. They can walk to school. They will eventually learn enough English and get their working permits, and they'll be able to work. But then, and they will be able to move out of our house at some point, but where will they move? We would love to see that kind of family stay here. They're a lovely family. I don't know if there's anything in Pleasantville that could accommodate them. So my pitch is, let's have a diverse community. Let's make that not only a focus, but a kind of an emotional thing. That we embrace the kinds of people that perhaps won't be able to afford the biggest house in the village, but that we embrace everyone, and that we have the kind of multi-economic level, multicultural, everything that this village has always been. So that's my pitch.
Thank you.
Affordable.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. So next is Nancy Conforti and Pete Jacobson, 12 Hillcrest Avenue.
My husband and I have been here since 2002, and Pleasantville was very beautiful and natural. And one of the things that we always enjoyed was its peace. So my question is, it is a village, and sometimes it seems to me that overdevelopment will make it less of a village and more of a city. You know, I don't necessarily like the idea. I mean, there are now hundreds of new people coming in these new developments, and how, you know, to lose the village part of it. I mean, they said here in the handout that you want to keep what we love about Pleasantville, and what we love is that it is a village, and we don't necessarily want to be. A lot of us don't want to be a city, you know, like White Plains, where all you see is apartment houses. My original question is, could we have a moratorium? Because let's see what all the development that's there now, how that shakes out before we, take the Chase building, which should really be a landmark, and make that into another big development with multiple apartments. I don't know. How does that make sense? I mean, how do we preserve what we have is a big question. And even crossing the street, it takes so long to get across the street with all the traffic. And if you go down Grant Street, where that, and the other thing I wanted to ask is about the beauty. Like the Toll Brothers, their development is beautiful. The one on Depew Street is shockingly ugly. It's just, and we're looking at lights. We're on the other side of the Sawmill. We're looking at these glaring lights that highlight it. We lost our view. It just immediately took away the view of the town, and it just seems like it's taking over. It's being too developed, and I guess the main thing is keep it a village. Don't make it into a city. And I can't imagine what it would be like if we lose the Chase building and the parking lot, and then the Girl Scout complex. Why can't we figure out a way to make it into something that's good for the town? We used to have a rec center across the street. It's now that house, which is beautiful. But I don't know. What do we gain by overdeveloping? I don't know. That's my question.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Can I just, the one piece I wanted to comment on is the Girl Scout building. A lot of folks have asked about it and continue to ask about it. As Nicole mentioned, we looked at it, the school district looked at it, we looked at it together. The building needs a massive amount of work and hatched a budget to purchase and renovate it for public use, about $10 million. And then, of course, there would be the operating costs to keep it running, and then the impacts of what might then be a very vibrant use right in that location. So certainly having another gym would be a fantastic thing. It's not a full-size basketball court, but we could use another gym. But I can tell you that neither the village nor the school district felt we were in a position to take on $10 million worth of debt and likely $1 million or $2, or certainly $1 million-ish in annual operating costs without a significant spike in your property taxes. So what I can tell you about that site at the moment is that I believe what's likely to happen is that it will be, the building will be demolished and the site turned into two-family homes, which are zoning compliant, facing Bedford, and at the moment, pending what happens, 2 single-family homes on lots created on Great Oak Lane. So certainly relative to the potential for that having turned into, for example, another school, a charter school or something of that kind, that would have been a very, very, very significant traffic and congestion problem. So there you have it. Too expensive by our lights, and I can tell you, hard to imagine that most of you would have been willing to accept a tax increase that would have been required to do it. So someone said it's for our kids. I totally get it, but I can tell you, I mean, you doubtless have the same conversations I have. Maybe I have more of them. There are a whole lot of people who live here and struggle to make that happen. They want to live here. They care about the place. They love Pleasantville. In many, many cases, everybody's running as fast as they can to make it work, and they're proud and glad to do it, but it's running out faster in front of lots of us than people can keep up. As I mentioned, I've lived here 36 years. Mariana's lived here 38 years. I moved into this village in an environment where there was a hardware store, 2 shoe stores, 3 or 4 gift stores, places to buy women's clothing, places to buy men's clothing, 2 different pharmacies. I recall saying when we moved here, there's one of everything downtown. There isn't one of everything downtown in any small downtown anymore. And so part of what Nancy was referring to about wanting to maintain a village environment goes back to what David was saying, which is to say, I want that too. If I could turn back the clock, in many ways I would, but the reality of the economic environment is such that most of these property owners can't do what they used to do. So that's where we are. So, all right.
I just, one little comment about the property on Depew Street that you mentioned, just so that you're aware of that. I believe that there's currently a process that going on in the planning board to look at the fact that there's a discrepancy between the plans that the developer originally put forth and what has actually been built. So just that you're aware that
That is an ongoing
that is an ongoing issue
matter,
that,
I can assure
that
you.
that they are addressing. Hopefully.
All right, next up is Samantha Hoover, 7 View Street, and following her, Noel Nicolai, 44 Hayes Hill.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Hoover. I'm the chair of the Pedestrian Safety Committee here in Pleasantville. We're a group of volunteer Pleasantville residents who work closely with the village to improve and advocate for pedestrian safety, obviously. I'm here tonight not to take a pro-development or anti-development stance. The reality is that with these new buildings, we'll of course have more residents, which means more cars, more traffic, more people walking around town. Traffic is clearly already a huge issue, as we've already talked about, and it will only be more so with these new buildings. So I'm here tonight to really say that we must invest in pedestrian safety and encourage walking. This means new and safer crosswalks, new and better and bigger sidewalks. It's been so great to see the Jacob Burns improvements and what a difference that's going to make to them and to all of us. Improved lighting of dangerous intersections and traffic calming measures like rumble strips and speed signs and many other things. We thank the Village of Pleasantville for the improvements that have been made over the past few years. Some of the most noticeable may be the bright green and white crosswalks near our schools, which have been a great improvement, and push-button crosswalks and many other things. But more needs to be done. Many of us, including my family, moved to Pleasantville because it's a walking community, as we've all talked about. At this moment of transition for Pleasantville, we really need to prioritize the safety of the community and encourage walking. These new buildings, of course, will bring more tax revenue. I'm here tonight to urge the village to invest in our pedestrian safety. I know it's not easy, I know it's not cheap, but it really is important to make us all safer and to create a stronger, healthier, and more vibrant community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Samantha, and thank you to you and the rest of the committee. They've really done an incredible job and have, done a significant amount. We just put in a request to the county for a pretty hefty price tag for some new lit crosswalks on Memorial Plaza, which was one of the things that you guys got going. So.
Thank you, Samantha. Welcome, Noel Nicolai, 44 Hayes Hill.
Hi. So my children are fourth generation here in Pleasantville. I've been here in New Wheeler Avenue when Magic Walk was the only restaurant that you could get food from.
Me too.
And
Yes.
like Ms. Cocho said, I think a lot of the improvements that have happened over the last 15 or 20 years really have brightened up downtown, and the farmers market, all of the restaurants that are there have really contributed to a lot of Pleasantville pride and a vibrancy that has benefited the town. I think that there's a correlation between the zoning changes and the multi-story builds that have allowed for these developments, and so many of them have gone up in such a short period of time, and we haven't had the ability to assess their overall impact on the community. Right now, if you are driving from Roselle to BRS and you hit traffic, you can actually jog it faster than you can get through Jean-Jacques. That's absurd, right, in a 1-mile town. Things that impacts, I know we're all facing it, but my daughter's best friend in first grade, we're in the old village, she's on the opposite side of town. It impacts when and how we see each other because our schedules don't allow for sitting around for 30 minutes back and forth, right? The other issue is that we are a walking school district, and the way that that BRS dismisses in these schools is you have to be there to pick up your kids. There isn't and aren't places for parents to park. And so the more traffic that there is, I leave my house for a 250 pickup at 225 to get a parking spot, walk to the school. If you collectively think about the parents who are leaving work to do that, you're talking about thousands of hours a week of parent time in pickups and drop-offs. Adding more people into our current infrastructure is only going to make that more and more challenging. So before we move forward, perhaps we can reconsider the zoning and the multi-story. I excuse my complete and utter lack of knowledge of village government policy and how to change it. But while there's not occupants in the post office, or it's not fully occupied on Washington Avenue, we really need to know what that impact will be. That's the first thing. The second thing is I would love to see some sort of standardized guidelines for the exteriors of buildings. I think we've talked a lot about taxes and budgets and money. What's always kind of sacrificed in capitalism is beauty. And we have a beautiful town. I'd love to keep it that way, if it's awnings or fonts or whatever. The third thing is that this is me, Serge, I'm not speaking for the group here. 7 p.m. happens to be bedtime. And I have a lot of friends who wanted to be here and couldn't because of the timing. This is such an important topic for so many people. Perhaps our future meetings could consider, a time that parents could also be here.
Would that be later or earlier? What would be best?
I think 8 p.m. is probably better. So
Okay.
Everyone
Yeah.
I know who wanted to be here, it's 7 to 7:45 is
Yeah.
when they're trying to get everyone bathed into bed. And so they're Zooming on their phones while they're tucking everyone in. So thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Noelle. Let me just respond to a couple of points. One is, I described the planning process that led to allowing 4 stories in that one block. There have been no other zoning changes of any kind. The projects that we have seen down by LaDuca Auto, the project at 39 Washington, the project now discussed at 440 Bedford Road, could have happened 20 years ago. It's just that they didn't. So that might be cause to reconsider our zoning, but it's not because we changed something. It's because the owners of those properties came up with a new circumstance. The other point I wanted to make, obviously traffic is, as we've all said, been nightmarish. The sawmill didn't help, but that's not the only piece of it. One significant piece is east-west traffic going through Pleasantville, but not stopping here, not living here, not starting or stopping here, is very, very significant as a means from getting from one side of the county to the other. Painfully, if you care to look at those old studies dating back to the 50s, there was a plan to build a Westchester Expressway. In fact, the 117 piece from Phelps out to Rockwood, from Rockwood over to 448 was the beginning of that. Literally the idea of building a 4-lane expressway that would go all the way to Armonk. Thank God that didn't happen. However, we suffer the results of the difficult east-west traffic. On the school traffic issue, one of the struggles we're having, and this goes back to what David was commenting about, these changed patterns with so many people who used to be off working Monday to Friday during working hours and are now not necessarily out of the village some or all of the days, is we've got a very much changed circumstance. The conditions at pick up and drop off at the schools are a feeling worse than ever, and yet there are 130 fewer kids in the school district than there were 10 years ago. So, how you connect those things, clearly somebody's behavior is changing. So, all right, next up is Patrick Pregiato, 32 Manville, and behind him, Ben Brown, formerly of Pleasantville. Welcome back, now of Ferris Avenue, White Plains. Patrick Pregiato.
Oh,
Next
Peter,
up.
also to add, and traffic flow too has also changed because the demographics and also homes in general have changed. For example, I remember growing up, we had one car for the whole family. Nowadays, you have a family where mom, dad, they both have a car. Child turns 16 years old, he gets a car. So now some houses that literally have 4 people live there have 4 cars. And those are trends that we've seen that have changed that affect everything, but it affects the whole thing overall. And it's not, how do we tell people, hey, stop buying cars or stop driving your cars? It's not something we could do.
Or we could say you could only buy a car if you buy it from Pleasantville, Ford, Subaru, or Volkswagen.
So
All right.
that adds to another element of traffic that's adding so much more. Also, more people are driving to locations that they could walk to, which used to not be as much. I mean, I remember going downtown. I lived in the old Village too. I lived right across from where Michael's was, and we would walk into town all the time. That was a normal, common thing. People don't do that anymore. People go into, if they're picking up, any kind of fast food or anything, or any restaurant, they drive in. That's why you see all this happen. At top of that, you also add, through the pandemic, you add things like, Uber Eats and Dash, all those kind of services add more elements of people who are calling and ordering something from a restaurant that maybe it's $30. And now you have another car that's picking up that order from there, picking up another order from up the street. Now you probably have 5 cars that aren't even residents that are just picking up food that probably was less than $50. So all those aspects really add to this traffic, and that's something that a lot of it also came during COVID. So those are elements that are adding to our traffic and adding to just so many more people that we're seeing that are trends that are very difficult to control.
All right, we have a growing stack here, so we're going to be here a while if we don't keep it going. Ben Brown, are you here? Welcome, Ben Brown, formerly of Pleasantville, 155 Ferris Avenue, White Plains. Next up, Tony Burton, 116 Pierce Drive.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for hearing me. I grew up here in town. My folks moved here in about 1992. I'm an alumnus of this high school. I've lived in Pleasantville most of my life until 2018. I'm an alumnus of this high school. I moved back to Westchester County after attending college and law school. I worked for a nonprofit in Westchester for the first 5 years of my career. I had kind of a low nonprofit salary, and I couldn't afford to get my own place, so I continued to live with my parents until a few years ago when I moved to White Plains. So, and I was 30 years old when I moved out. So I'm very sensitive to this crisis of housing affordability in our area. I'd like to make a few comments about that. I think it's not a problem that you can conceptualize in terms of Pleasantville alone. We're in a very large metropolitan housing market. It's a highly integrated, highly interdependent market, and a large market from an economics perspective. So I don't even think approving or not approving specific developments in Pleasantville is the key issue. We also have a real, I've sort of learned through my professional work, we have a real issue of fair housing in Westchester. The county was successfully sued over fair housing issues, and I would give you this room as evidence. If you look around this room, I think you'd have to admit it doesn't reflect the diversity of Westchester County or of New York State. But I believe in a rational response to these problems, and I don't think approving a specific developer's project in Pleasantville makes a whit of difference in terms of the regional housing market that we're in. But Pleasantville has such wonderful resources in terms of a really educated population and really astute public officials, and I hope that you can play a role in terms of regional leadership in moving toward the regionally coordinated approach to housing that we would actually need to address the supply and demand imbalance and have some kind of actually affordable market housing. So that's what I wanted to offer. My generation has been, I think, in many ways forsaken. Like I couldn't afford my own home until I was 30 years old, and I believe in looking for solutions to that. But I encourage you to. I live in White Plains now, and there's these very sort of cozy feeling deals with developers, and they dress it up in the rhetoric of housing affordability. But I don't think that approach works. I think it has to be a regionally coordinated approach, and I'd encourage you to consider getting involved in even in very early formative aspirational efforts at building the kind of coordination we would need, where one day we could develop with reciprocal commitments from other municipalities. Thank you all so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ben. Welcome back. Tony Burton, welcome. Next up, Jonathan Cunningham.
Tony Burton, 116. Full disclosure, my wife works with the Village, so as a disclaimer, the following opinions are mine and do not reflect the whole household. I need to say that so I can go home tonight.
That's true for all of our spousal conditions, I think.
Thank you. Very specifically, I love this town, and that's why we're all here. But specifically for the Cooley Street project, I think it would be prudent to hit pause, and you can have a moratorium because it's your property. All of these things are coming to a head at one time. All this development's coming together, and people are feeling the stress from the Solomon River Parkway to the expanse of Pleasantville and everything else going on here. It's all coming to a head at one time. For the Cooley Street in particular, you have the ability to wait and see how things come to fruition, see what the stressors are. We don't know what 150 units are going to feel like until people are in there. So the idea to actually go for this sale as a money grab now will probably still be there 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So I implore you to please just wait as long as you can to see the impact of these development and these people coming into these units before selling something you control and putting professional buildings in there that we don't even know what it could be that would be even move in there. And I appreciate that it wouldn't be more housing, but we don't know the impact of the development here. So please, as long as you can, wait and then make a better assessment.
Thank you, Tony. Next up, Jonathan. Following Jonathan, Barry Lenahan, 320 Washington.
Good evening. First, let me say I am not against development. I recognize it's an essential element to maintaining a thriving, robust community, both economically and socially. However, like anything, too much too fast can be unhealthy and lead to unforeseen and unintended negative consequences, and that's really where my worry is at this point. Between Depew Street and 70 Memorial Plaza, there are going to be roughly 100, well, not roughly, per your slide, exactly 150 new apartments. And add to that the 40 or so that are proposed for the Bedford Road, Bank of New York / Chase. You're approaching 200 new apartments in a very tight area. Assuming that there are 2 people per apartment, that's 400 people, which is roughly over a 5% increase in the population of Pleasantville. Per Paul's slide, you're hard-pressed to find a 10-year period where Pleasantville increased its population by more than 5%, let alone doing it in 2 years. The prospect of doing so in the course of a couple of years, concentrated in a couple blocks, is both daunting and concerning. The implications on our infrastructure and our first responders alone could be significant, especially with regard to our volunteer ambulance and fire departments, which are always challenged recruiting new people, and we need them. So I think there's a public safety aspect to this too that really needs to be investigated. There will be inevitable increases in traffic and density of people in the immediate downtown and throughout Pleasantville. This puts at risk the quality, charm, and character of our community. Does it mean it will all be bad? No, I'm not suggesting that. I just don't know, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. The point is, the compounding effects of these developments is unknown, as you've admitted, and can have serious negative consequences given its current scale. That alone would suggest slow walking it forward. Having said that, there's little we can do about the current developments, but we do need to slow down future development until we better understand, as Mr. Burton said, the impacts of what we now have in place. On Monday, I attended your meeting. David Vincimori asked me, am I aware of other developments away from what's happening now? Here's what I know. Bedford Road, Bank of New York / Chase, 40 units. The Girl Scout building, which will include single-family and multifamily units. Clark Street, it's the same deal, a little smaller, with both single and multifamily units being proposed and pursued. The entire length of the east side of West Washington Avenue, from the new Lofts building to the corner of Manville Road, has been slated for redevelopment. It's the same developer who's doing the 70 Memorial, that's done the Loft, that was proposing to do your parking lot building, and he's on record saying he is going to redevelop that whole length of property on Memorial or on Washington Avenue. There have been proposed residential developments on the corner of Cooley and Pleasantville that we have seen. It's not current now, but that's been brought to our attention in the past.
What?
The Cary property.
What do you mean?
The parking lot on Cooley.
Oh, you mean Cooley and Bedford?
Cooley and Bedford, yes.
Next to Chatterbox.
Correct. The Cary property was talked about, and there are no doubt many others I have missed, or some others that I've missed, And those are just the ones we know about because the developers have come to the village and expressed their interest. Within the last week, as an example, we've just learned that the village is considering the sale of the parking lot behind the post office.
Can you wrap up soon, Jonathan? You're at 4 minutes here. Not cutting
What?
you off, but can you hurry up? You're well beyond the 3 minutes. So,
Okay. I'm sorry. I wrote it down to be quick, guys. I'm sorry.
Friends.
There have been...
The only reason I said that is that we have a stack of cards, very big, and I'm trying to get a chance for everyone to speak, and we have a list of questions people want answered. Any of you who know me, in the many, many years I've done this, I'll stay as long as it takes until the last person has said what they want to say. Not everybody feels that way. That's why I asked. I'm not trying to shut anyone down, and I wish it wasn't implied that I was.
I can come back up later if you
That's
want
fine.
me.
Finish. Finish off, please.
My intent's not to take somebody else's spot.
No, I know that. Just
Within the last week, as an example, we have learned that the village is considering the sale of the parking lot behind the post office to a private developer who's looking to build a 4-story building. If consummated, it will contribute to the development challenges already facing the village and will no doubt lead to more people, more traffic, more compounding of pressures on our safety and physical infrastructure. I urge the board to consider pausing the development. The impact on public safety alone seems to potentially be potentially significant in itself to warrant study and understanding. I appreciate the nature of moratoriums are heavy-handed, though they can be managed, but any community facing a significant population increase such as we are, with all the uncertainties that accompany such accelerated and concentrated growth, would be well advised to consider this tool as a means to slow the process down and make sure our zoning and other safeguards are adequate to ensure the protection of the community as a whole. Certainly, if you were to ask me, which I guess you are in an accelerated manner here, what to do about it, I would say to put the potential sale of the lane lot on hold. While I understand the benefits of the sale, parking, additional tax receipts, et cetera, I do not think at this point they outweigh the potential negatives, at least not until we have greater visibility on the impacts of existing development. Think about it. If the concerns expressed here tonight turn out to be valid, delaying the sale will have been seen as omniscient and smart. On the other hand, if the concerns about current development turn out to be less than imagined, the village will be far better for it, further increasing the value of the lot and the prospects for sale in the future. Either way, waiting has merit. The lot is a valuable option of the village. Options always are worth more alive than dead, so keeping the option alive and delay the sale is what you can do to slow development and not to contribute to it. And please, lacking other options, do consider the moratorium. Thank you.
So, Peter?
Before you leave, Jonathan, since you have occupied this
Pardon
seat,
me?
since you have occupied this seat before, I would just be curious what you mean by moratorium. Since, if you have any more specific ideas, because we're still learning about this, honestly.
Yes.
what would the moratorium be on?
That's legal. That's legal.
So my thought on the moratorium is public safety is what I'm most concerned about, and I've heard it from. And I don't know how much you've spent talking with the volunteer fire department. I've talked to folks there who have expressed a concern, and I think that we need to really understand the ability of our public safety folks to respond to such a big increase in population and to be able to maintain it. And if at the end put a moratorium in place, study it. If at the end zoning comes out that would suggest ways to mitigate some of the issues, because part of the problem is you just can't grow our volunteer fire department. They're having problems both on the state level, making it challenging, and locally just getting new recruits. But I think that public safety, which is the root of what you guys do,
so I understand
would drive the moratorium.
This is a great conversation,
move
and every
on.
one of
Okay.
these questions.
All right,
I just want to point out, if we take this much time with every speaker, we
Good
will be,
point.
I just did a quick analysis here till 1:30
All
in the
right,
morning.
you and I
don't
can
think
talk.
anyone's right.
You and
Yes.
I can talk later.
One last thing I would recommend you do is mail out these notices to people in the mail, because the electronic mail, I think, has a built-in bias against the elderly and against folks who are not as connected. And we need to hear from everybody. Thank you.
All right, next up, Barry Lenahan, 320 Washington, and the speaker after that is Sean Hall, 141 Mountain. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. I don't have the history, Pleasantville history, like some of you have. We moved here 4 years ago. It's a
pretty good.
very lovely town. We like it. After seeing your presentation and the 4 years that we've been here, every year we've seen multiple buildings going up. I got to tell you, I oppose them right out. It's changing the whole demographics of this town, taking away the charm. It's, for me, I would prefer it to stay just the way it is. And I like to echo what some of the other gentlemen had said. I think there should be a moratorium. You should do your diligence on this. In fact, anything of this magnitude should be voted on by the village people themselves. They're the ones that should have to say whether or not something like this can go forward. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Barry Lenahan. Sean Hall, 141 Mountain. Next up after that, Lynn Weinig, 10 Grandview.
I just wondered if you could comment on the architectural review process, in particular having to do with aesthetics. I wonder what you require of a potential developer in terms of renderings. For example, on the Memorial Plaza project, you showed us one rendering there, but I wonder whether they have to give you renderings from all sorts of views. For example, I looked the other day from Pleasantville Road, and although the Memorial Plaza project is not bad looking from Memorial Plaza itself, when I look from Pleasantville Road, it's like one solid brick wall with no windows. And I wonder whether in the review process they were expected to provide that rendering. And I know you also said, well, the other reason I'm asking this question is I wonder in any kind of a review process how we could end up with something as someone said, shockingly ugly as the Depew Street project. And you mentioned that what they built was not what they showed you.
Correct.
And I'm wondering what recourse you have to make them fix it.
So on that point, it's not a village board matter, that's a planning and ARB matter. That board functions as both. And believe me, there is much discussion going on about the differences between what they built and what rendering was shown. Highly problematic, and I can assure you council's involved. So stay tuned on that. That's a struggle. I can tell you that, again, this dates back to my life on the Planning Commission, which was a long time ago. Very significant projects require renderings from all kinds of sides. In the case of the 70 Memorial Project, I don't know exactly how many renderings were provided, but in the era now of 3D architectural models, it's pretty easy to provide a rendering from any direction. And so planning, I know, asks for that in many circumstances. There is a building code circumstance where certain walls that are adjacent to another property can't have windows if that other property could potentially develop within a certain distance. That's outside our purview, but that goes into it. So I do think that our Planning Commission asks for a lot. There's no doubt about that. But let me also say, having way back been in the Architectural Review Board in a very different world, and also on the Planning Commission, people, including all of us, don't like to be told what they want to build. And so it's a struggle, partly powerful persuasion. There are some things that the village commissions can do, but there certainly isn't anything that says, well, you have to build it looking like X. So
But
we are at the
does it
moment
have to be,
pardon, go ahead.
compatible with the existing neighborhood. something that's completely out of character, do you get to reject that? If they come and say, I want to build this, do you get to say, no, that's not acceptable?
Again, it's a planning commission responsibility, and certainly that discussion is ongoing. I can tell you, as you might imagine, compatibility is in the eye of the beholder, and the person who wants to do something, including residents who want to do something, don't always comport to neighbors' view of it. So I do think we have very thoughtful, very responsible, careful people doing as much as they can. And I can tell you we've engaged our planning consultant to look at our historic district overlay. That would be the Bedford Road route out all along Bedford Road to the Old Village and turning left towards the Old Village to see about improving the clarity of that and giving planning/ARB some more teeth. So
Okay, thank you.
I understand the issue. So Lynn Weinig, you're up. After that, Jim Kennedy.
Peter?
One Seneca.
Let's talk for
Sure.
30 seconds. The term moratorium has come up now a number of times, and I feel like we should make clear that that word does not exist in New York State law, statutory law.
I'm sorry, but that's not correct. I'm an attorney.
It's a case law phenomenon, right?
But that is law.
No,
Case
no,
law
okay,
and
and statutory law,
are
right.
two relevant factors.
So I was going to talk for just 30 seconds and say that one of the challenges for any such land use moratorium we would enact is that first it's going to be very short, right? The 6 months is the normal number from the case law in New York State. Second, it can't it may have unintended consequences on many other private property owners. Right, so it's not just going to do the thing that you want it to do. It can do many other things, and we have to have a valid reason that will hold up in a court of law. So I think Jonathan Cunningham's argument about public safety is the sort of valid reason that does get upheld in the case law that I've been reading, and so I think that's a specific proposal that I've heard, and I welcome the specifics of that instead of just kind of the general request to stop.
All right, back to you, Lynn.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and I greatly appreciate the fact that you've called this meeting for all of us to voice our concerns and our feelings, of what's positive, what's negative. White Plains has been getting a lot of traction tonight. I grew up in White Plains. I saw literally, I moved in from the hospital until I was 25 years old. I saw a huge building, going up in downtown every year. I lived in a residential area. It did not affect where I lived. The city of White Plains is very large. The Village of Pleasantville is less than 2 square miles. And I really feel at this point that we are at a turning point. It's a very significant time for this board to consider smart growth. And not just growth for the sake of we need some money because we've got to, fix our water or whatever, all the budgetary, issues are. Because that could turn into other problems. So as Jonathan indicated, we've got a public safety issue. This is a volunteer ambulance corps and a volunteer fire department. We don't want to have to start paying taxes to a paid fire department, because that is what could potentially happen if we outgrow the services that we have here as a municipality. Speaking about services, we have to look at sanitation. We have to look at our roadways. There's 2 other things. You asked about what a moratorium could potentially do. And a moratorium is not a 5-year stint. It's a short-term plan for a municipality to examine its zoning in light of certain factors, like Jonathan indicated. I think one of the other things that you have to look at now is what would a full build-out of the downtown look like under the current zoning? If Jonathan mentioned a whole lot of projects that are in the pipeline or could potentially be in the pipeline. What does our downtown look like, and what effect does that have on our community if it's built out to the full specifications of the zoning at this point? The other issue that I think is really important that a lot of people have discussed tonight, what are going to be the cumulative effects of all of this new development downtown? Okay, so A moratorium can be used to put things on hold, so basically it's no building permits get issued for a certain period of time until studies are done, the planners come in, and you have a determination as to what the cumulative effects are going to be, which we just don't know. So that's all I want to say, and
Great. Thank you, Lynn. Next up, Jim Kennedy, 1 Seneca, followed by Tom Murphy, 52 Orchard. Hey, Jim.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, I just want to thank the board for orchestrating a meeting like this. And I've lived here as long as Peter has, and this is the biggest village board meeting I've ever seen. This is the biggest village board meeting I've ever seen, and living here for 35 plus years. So thank you very much for the opportunity. My question was partially answered already, and my comments go along the lines of Jonathan's about the future since the current developments here. And my question, which is partially answered, was about what kind of control you actually have over the architectural design. Because I think maybe the look and feel of the community is being sacrificed to development to a certain extent. And I think, Mr. Mayor, you addressed that to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't easy, obviously.
So looking forward, and I have done planning as a profession in my career, and looking forward and seeing tonight that the master plan dates back to 2017, I wonder, looking forward, when is that going to be updated, and taking into considerations all the changes that we've been talking about tonight.
Thank you, Jim. Tom Murphy, 52 Orchard. Welcome, sir.
Hello. Thank you again for having this better?
Better.
Thank you again for having this meeting so people can voice their opinions. A lot of the topics that previous speakers have brought up, I agree with, so I will try not to rehash. But one thing I want to bring up that kind of was touched on, there's certain things that you can control. And I think that's something that you can focus on. Now, you mentioned there's 3 committees that basically govern what has to go before the board. And, in my opinion and my experience, because I do attend a lot of those meetings, I get the impression that they are not really a cohesive thought behind how they're governed. And by that I mean they're not all following the same plan. A lot of these meetings that I attend and listen to how they address some of the requests that are brought up to them, they're very subjective. And I think the plan that was done in 2017 called something out, and I believe one of the previous speakers, Noel, called to it. It recommended the town define some guidelines for what the look and feel of the buildings around the town can be. So that's something I don't think that's been addressed. It was a recommendation of the vendor that you used to help build out that plan. There was also a bunch of other recommendations in that plan as well that I haven't seen addressed in the town. But now back to one question I have, or a point to bring around the moratorium. When a lot of these variances or the planning committees review things, it's not clear that they're taking into full consideration the impact it's going to have on the surrounding community. And one of the examples I'll bring up is the Chase Bank. The Chase Bank is coming before because they're struggling to find an occupant for the building downstairs. I don't know if that has anything to do with all the other retail space that has been added to the community via the Depew Street building and 70 Memorial Plaza. Is that stuff taken into consideration when all of these plans are presented before the town?
So just to be clear, there haven't been variances issued to allow more retail?
No, there hasn't, but I'm asking if that's considered and discussed when they're talking about these. There was variances issued, I believe, 470 Memorial Plaza. Not to the
Minor-
retail
I think
space,
there were minor variances.
but that was to the residential units upstairs, I believe. But again, my point is all of this being considered? And the biggest impact, I think, that's not being considered, or I've never heard it discussed really until tonight, is the infrastructure of the town. And by the infrastructure, that means the police department, the fire department. It also means the water supplies, the electric supplies. I think in your notes, you mentioned the cell tower. Are those items really considered when the town has the ability, when one of the boards has the ability to say no to something?
So let me just touch on water, sewer, electric, for example. No project is approved without the Department of Public Works assessing its potential impact, and in many cases, 70 Memorial was a good example. We certainly had the water supply for it, but they were required to upgrade a number of water mains in order to serve them. So certainly, those kinds of issues are absolutely included in a review, and we periodically review how much headroom, so to speak, we have in our capacity to deliver water and stormwater and sewer water. So,
Thank you. So the last thing, I just want to make a point that I think the guidelines do need to be put together for the town. Because when you talk about Depew Street, I've sat in on some of those meetings, and the developer who had the right to build that is asking for advice on what he can do different, and there's nothing the board can put before them and say, if you followed these guidelines, it would be a lot easier for you to, pass our approval. So I ask for those guidelines.
okay.
Thank you again, everyone.
Kat Nemec, 37 Martling, and after Kat is Helen Muir, 3 Hayes Hill.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you. You have a thankless job. I worked with Peter Shearer for many years, and one of the best parts of splitting our business was I did not have to hear about all of this 24 hours a day. You people are saints.
That's why.
And after saying that, I want to say, for the first time in a long time, Jonathan Cunningham, I think, I'm glad you're sitting because I completely agree with you. We need to pause. And I keep hearing all the reasons we can't do that, but I think we need to focus on how to do that. How can we pause? If there's only a 6-month moratorium, well, then let's use that 6 months to figure out what we can do legally. I understand that there's some things that you can't do, that there are things that are out of your hands, and if the zoning laws allow it, and the people can pay for it, and they can figure out the parking, that they can do it. I get it. I get that you can't decide whether another pizza parlor or nail salon comes in. I get that. There's only so much you can do. But let's think about what you can do to pause. My son's 5th grade science teacher, when we were there for a meeting because my son had hidden a test that needed to be signed under his desk. The famous science teacher, Mr. Geyser, very appropriately named, said, Jacob, when you're in a hole, and you're in a hole right now, the first thing to do is to stop digging. We need to stop digging. We can't tell people that they have to walk their kids to school. I'm on my 2nd babysitting job of walking a kid to school. I walk him to school every day. We can't tell people to walk their kids to school. But with if I did my math right, the 23, 79, 71 units, that's 173 units, times 2 is 346, times 3 people per unit is 519. If 2 people have a car in each of those, that's 250 more cars that we have already that we don't know how they're going to affect this town. We have to stop. Figure out a way to stop. And if you need us to help you figure out a way to stop, just like they did with Just Say Yes, Just Say No, the craziness of building a new BRS school, make committees of people in this town who want to help you figure it out, how to get it done well, and let's do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat.
Were you volunteering there, Kat? Were you volunteering there?
Next up, Helen Muir, and following that, Gib Craig after Helen.
Hello. I both love following Kat and hate following Kat. Excellent. I'm here on a slightly different approach. As you all know, I'm on the chair of the Conservation Council. I'm on the Climate Smart Community Task Force. I'm in Pleasantville Recycles. One of my things I've been trying to push the village to do for a very long time is to pay attention to 4 things. 1, trees. We have a certain amount of tree canopy, and in the town of Mount Pleasant, I don't know the granular level in Pleasantville, but it has been decreasing. We need to up our tree canopy and maintain it. 2, open space. I submitted an open space index to the previous administrator. I don't know where it is. It cataloged all the properties in Pleasantville, residential, private, public, that were considered open space, in that there was, let's say, 1 house on 4 acres or 2 acres, where there was some space that could be considered habitat. I think it's important for us to go back, dig that up, and represent it. 3, wetlands. Wetlands are very important. They are the lifeblood of nature. In New York State, over 50% of the 160 threatened plant species are wetland plants. Also, I think many of us experienced that when we have decreased our open space and wetlands, we have had animal migrations in Pleasantville because of habitat loss, and that has resulted in some unwanted animals in people's yards. Animals deserve space just like we do. And the 4th thing is building codes. Over and above density and other things, cluster housing, which I believe in, affordable housing, I also believe very strongly in sustainable building. And that means that our building code should quickly move towards having net zero homes and buildings where the energy that building uses is made by that building. Wind turbines, solar or passive heating, better insulation, everything. And that way we are not going to increase our carbon footprint. Building alone, the cement and concrete used, is enormous use of carbon. And the climate smart community is pledging to reduce our carbon footprint. And how can we do that if we don't ask the builders to follow better code? I would like to see more roof gardens. I would like to see more spaces that come with new buildings for the people in those buildings to use. And I think it's very nice that you take a recreation fee from new buildings if they don't have recreation on site, but I think Toll Brothers would have done well to have had recreation on site. And thanks.
Okay.
Thanks. Helen, since we have a captive audience, I just want to let everybody know that we are working on a tree ordinance, and one of the things that we're looking at right now is seeing if we can do something with the zoning to address tree canopy when it comes to the zoning code. So if any of you are interested in those issues, please reach out because that's something
Right,
that,
I meant
that
to
we're-
admit,
Right.
it's on my list. Yes, and you can reach the CAC by going to the village website, finding our page, and there's an email address. Thanks.
Thank you, Helen. Next up, Gib Craig, followed by Christine Iovino. Welcome, sir. I'm looking forward to having you report your address.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that.
Your address,
121 Bedford Road.
which is just a gift from the gods. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
You're doing an incredible job over there.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a hobby.
Well,
Yeah.
we're glad to have you doing it. It's
Okay, great.
And Freddie Hettinger is glad to.
So anyway, just to get right to the point about traffic, some awareness and some observations I've had is just a lot of, there's been a lot of money invested in those crosswalks and the sidewalks, but the observations I have are pretty simple, and simple things kind of fix things better than throwing money at things. Okay, so one thing I noticed is that at the Jacob Burns intersection there, when the pedestrian lights go off, every street shuts down. Okay, so you do that once or twice during commuter time, that's exponential. You wonder why there's cars backed up to 9A, and Pace University. You have all these little things happening all at once. Even a person hitting a button and then walking past without waiting for that, 2 minutes later, everybody's waiting and stopped for nobody crossing, and that's exponential. Simple little fixes. I mean, why is it that we have to shut down that whole intersection there? And, New York City, in fact, people can cross the street and the traffic flows fine. So it has to do with timing. Let's say that person presses that button, they don't want to wait there for a solid 45 seconds. Sure enough, if they get across the street fast, we don't have to wait for them for 45 seconds. There's reasons why, like, these traffic studies come out because they count the cars. But if you put a video camera on during certain times of the day, and even had somebody controlling the traffic lights, that's the way it works in the bad intersections in New York City. I'm not saying that that's what we should do, but I'm just saying that we need to use the technology that we've put out there. Okay, we throw in these $1 million traffic pedestrian walkways and traffic light systems that can work together, but they're not timed properly. In fact, another one is like the park. It's ironic because the parking enforcement car parks right on the switch in the street at Wheeler Avenue, and it's shutting that light on and off, on and off, on and off all the time that car is sitting there. It's ridiculous. That's just, I see these things all the time when I'm
So
driving.
I don't think that's exactly what's happening, but I will tell you for sure, hours and hours and hours have been spent and will continue to be spent trying to get the county, the state, the village, and the contractor who manages all these lights to address these very problems. And clearly, as a result of the work we're doing on Manville Road, we feel like we have an opportunity to get this improved from the corner at Pleasantville Road and Manville down into Bedford across Manville. We're in a circumstance where there are clearly moments when the lights are completely screwing everything up. You're completely right.
Yeah.
The solution to it is not crystal clear, but the bureaucratic means of getting to the solution is a struggle, but we got a lot of people struggling, so we're with you.
Forget the bureaucracy. Why doesn't someone just try to take control?
We don't have
It's
control.
not ours.
It's not our road.
What I'm saying, who's in charge of throwing together the algorithm for that light? And why is it one thing stops all the streets?
You're not the first to ask this question, me included.
Okay, all right, so let's move past that. Okay,
Yes.
the east-west traffic. you talk about throwing another, Cooley Street with a two-way going on there. The cars that I see going and clogging up Grant Street and Manville Road, going towards Chappaqua, it's people coming from probably Briarcliff, Ossining, and Sleepy Hollow with Connecticut plates. Obviously, they're trying to get on the Sawmill River Parkway going north. If that was 2 lanes, that would alleviate it. But if you throw in another road coming in from Cooley Street, shooting traffic right out into that little spot there, it's really going to jam things up. That's just an observation. The only other way is to put an on-ramp onto the Sawmill Parkway to get rid of that clog down at Grant Street and Sawmill River Parkway.
That's...
I know, but
right.
it's just...
Look, what I want to say is all these frustrations are mine and ours and our DPW and our cops. It's not like we haven't noticed. We have and are pushing in every way we can. I do think there's some light at the end of the tunnel, but it's a little bit like, sort of trying to broker a common decision among the forces of NATO, Everybody's on the same side, but they don't all have the same view. So we're on it.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, that's not reassuring that you're on it. It's just because if you want to throw in more buildings and cars.
To clarify for people who don't understand what we're talking about, not all the streets in Pleasantville belong to the Village of Pleasantville, right? A lot of our main streets belong either to the county or to the state. So, for instance, with the improvements that we're doing on Manville, that's a state road. To give you one example. We have spent over a year about the traffic light that's at the intersection of Wheeler and Manville because the state, I won't tell you the whole story, I promise, because it doesn't follow the current state regulations. So it's like the whole thing is like a theater of the absurd because it all has to go it all has to go through the state. So that's what we're talking about. Just to be clear, we don't actually have control of all of these lights and intersections because they don't all belong to us.
What do you need to get control?
So I would love to be reassuring. I totally would love that. You and me both. I can't offer a promise that at the moment I can't deliver. Believe me, we've spent a huge amount of time on this issue. Nicole just mentioned.
What's the roadblock? I mean, I'm not trying to be critical.
The Department of Transportation has very rigid views. A, about what's right and what's wrong, and B, what could happen. We just spent quite a bit of consultant money in order to come up with an alternative at that intersection, that crazy situation where we have people blowing through the red light in front of the Burns because they see the green light beyond. That's at Wheeler and are misunderstanding. Whole complicated story. A lot of time has been spent. Now isn't the time to go through it. I'd be happy to tell you exactly that longer story in a different setting, and maybe you'd have a thought.
Yeah, good. All right.
So, okay.
I look forward to it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Christina Iovino. Next up, Rich McSpedden.
Hi. I'm going to be very not articulate right now because I'm very tired. But I grew up here, and I don't like the development. It's just not the same place that it was. I would like a pause on the development. I also had a question about the, zoning. How come we can't change the zoning laws to make these projects less desirable?
We can.
Can we do that?
Sure. But we're entitled to change our zoning code in any way we want, so long as we don't deprive property owners of a reasonable return on their property. So we can't do something that would essentially produce a building that doesn't have a reasonable return, but we can change the rules.
I mean, I feel like we should do anything we can to put a stop to all of the development. And going to safety and talking about the roads and the issue between it's a state, it's a county. I mean, I live up Locust, and I like to walk. And I like to walk into town, but I can't because I might get hit by a car. It is at the bottom of Locust, the intersection. It's crazy. There's no crosswalk. I see a family with a little stroller crossing Bedford there. There's not enough crosswalks. There's not enough sidewalks. Let me tell you, come to BRS at drop-off and pickup time. It is a mess. It is a total mess. Our crossing guards, they're doing a phenomenal job because it's really, really difficult. I actually see little kids walking into the road to get around each other because the sidewalks are so jammed because they're so skinny, and I don't know. I don't really, I don't have all the solutions, but I know there must be something better. And I feel like this community, we have great people here. I just feel like we could do better. And on that note, for the kids, I have young children, and I think that's why, a lot of people want to come here is because we have a great school system. It just makes me so sad that we do not have a recreation center. We don't. We have a garage. It was an ambulance corps garage. If you look at all of our neighboring districts, look at what they have as a recreation center. We need a place for kids to do sports, enrichment activities, after school and before school programs. I mean, we had a whole big issue with that. We are growing. If you're making new developments, I know you said there's less children, but I just don't foresee that, and I don't see how that's gonna happen. With sports, I mean, we're having, these are my kids, these are my children. We have 8-year-olds playing basketball 8 and 9 p.m. because we have no room. If it rains, we have no fields. It's just, it's a little unfair. And I just feel like it's unfair to say that the Girl Scout building was not able to be bought because, our taxes may have gone up. I know that, but it's an investment. Aren't we, investing in our kids? And why couldn't we rent out the Girl Scout building? Why couldn't we have found a solution? I don't know. It really makes me, it makes me sad. It makes me sad.
So,
thank you.
Christine, I did want to
Yes.
I did want to tell you one thing. Go on the Mount Pleasant Public Library website.
Mhm.
They were lucky to get some bequests over the last couple of years. They engaged a really good local architect who's actually known across the country, but happens to own a place in not in the Village, but in Greater Pleasantville. And the plans are really remarkable, and they will add new program space. They're going to add outdoor space, an amphitheater, pergola, and I think it doesn't answer a lot of your questions, but it will.
You're talking about at the library, they're going to make a new extension. Yes, I actually saw them talking about that when I was there. And I think that's wonderful, because if you go to the library at 3 o'clock, it's packed, and it's great. It's great. It's wonderful. We're out of COVID. We're all there. But again, I mean, my children love sports. I think sports are a great thing. Pleasantville is a big sports town, and that's why I'm here talking. I really wish that we could invest in something like that. I think it's an investment. I know it might not pertain to the development, but I would love to halt the development and start looking at some things for our kids. And I just don't understand why the town and the school district can't really come together to find a solution to that. I mean, it's like I see all these other communities developing these things, and I just don't see it happening here, but I do see these huge, big, ugly buildings, and that's what I see. It's sad. So, sorry, thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Because I'm curious, when I go back and read through the master plans from, the 90s, for example, one of the main things that the village board was trying to do was attract to the downtown, right? To attract businesses, to attract vibrancy. Mm-hmm. And you describe that you want it to be the way it was, and I'm curious, what is it that you want back? Because the minutes of the meetings at that time don't describe necessarily a really positive landscape of the village center, but I didn't live here then. So is there a feeling you want back, or a specific
charm,
a specific
space?
So a feeling is hard to legislate. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Right. Did someone want to say something? Go ahead.
So, but it's not going to be on the
Well, I
recording,
like,
so-
yeah, just, it looks huge. It looks huge. It looks ugly. The charm isn't there. The safety isn't there. I mean, there's so many more cars. It is, you're like a race car driver in the morning trying to get your kids to school. And it's just like, it just seems so, it's discouraging. And I just feel like we just want people to come here and to live in our town. And all we're doing is making these apartments that, people mention affordable. I had a question about this. What defines affordable housing, and how many of these apartments are really affordable? What's affordable? I mean, a $5,000 a month apartment, that's, I don't know, how is that contributing to like a diverse community,
So thanks for that. Let me just touch on a couple of points.
I know it was
Obviously,
a
we've been
lot,
looking
sorry.
for fields forever, and don't have, in a community as small as ours, at the moment, no more land to create fields. So the idea of the small gym in the Girl Scout building, massively attractive, but you're talking about a building that has so many problems, just pretty much everything. Plumbing, electricity, asbestos abatement, no fire alarm, no sprinkler, needs all new windows. And if we were to invest that $10 million to do it, we would then create a locus of activity that would be great to have, but would then create dozens, maybe more than dozens of cars, all
Right.
trying
And
to be there. So that's another problem. Right?
I totally agree
Yeah.
with you that it would create other things and it wasn't really like a, great project. But so then what's the solution? I know there's a lot of people that I've talked to in this community who had really creative ideas for other, sports domes, maybe putting, someone just mentioned today, lights up on the high school fields, not going towards Ashland, but going the other way towards the school so kids can practice. I mean, the Girls Dads Club field hockey, we couldn't have our practices, and field hockey in Pleasantville is dying out because it was dark and we couldn't practice, and that's not really fair to the girls in the community who want to play field hockey, but they just don't have a space, It's, I just think, yes, we've said over and over, the Girl Scout building isn't the right place, but, so what could we do? We're just going to keep building big, expensive apartments? I don't know. I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Rich McSpadden next. Michael Inglis after him. Rich McSpadden, 61 West Gore. Thank you.
Good evening. Been a resident for 22 years in Pleasantville. Loved every minute of it. Until about 5 years ago, when my quality of life really hit the fan. Maybe I'm not crazy. Can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
You turned it off.
Did I turn it off?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was just saying that my quality of life about 5 years ago hit the fan. This construction, along with everything you've already heard, has been quite stressful. I used to bike through town, walk through town, forget driving through town. It's just too much. I understand growth. I mean, I used to weigh 180 pounds. I don't anymore. It just happens. This town isn't what it was in 1950, 1980, and it's certainly not going to be what it is now 20 years from now. But my theme is enough. Enough. I think everyone here could say the same thing. Take a pause. There's tools at your disposal to get a lot done, and I don't know if you understand them all, if you don't, or you're unwilling to use them all. Developers come and go, and they're going to leave us here with the mess, and they're going to make their money and move on. That's what they do. One of the other hats I wear, I sit on the Westchester County Industrial Development Agency, as well as the local development committee. That hasn't been mentioned once today, that Mount Pleasant has an industrial development agency. I was wondering, and I'm pretty sure, every development here came before the Mount Pleasant IDA and requested tax incentives to do their projects. Is that a fair statement? Most
So
of them?
I think most of them have, and I
Right.
think the Mount Pleasant IDA has granted them sales and mortgage recording tax
Right.
abatements. There have been no reductions in taxes
On our
in the Village of Pleasantville.
pilots, yeah. So
None, zero.
a developer comes before an IDA and they make these requests to make their project financially viable. The minute they do that, you could ask for almost anything from them. This is where you come and bargain. One of the things they could be required to do is put money into your parks and rec, green space. You could have had all those developers pay for the Girl Scout school.
So,
You could,
as we
let me
already
just finish,
mentioned,
and then-
every single, we have a sliding scale, but single-family homes subdivided and created are a $5,000 fee. Some apartments, larger apartments are a $5,000 fee. Smaller apartments are a $2,500 fee into our Parks and Rec Fund.
Right. So you could use that money as you see fit.
Right, I mean,
You could
Toll
ask, you
Brothers.
could simply ask them to do things.
Right, it's the Toll
let alone
Brothers
require
project,
them. I've seen
60
this
right.
interaction before me at the board, and they come before you for months, and they want to feel out what you need. You need field hockey space. 20 acres behind Foxwoods is being proposed for a development. You could require that they put a park there. You could have bought the Girl Scout project for, what was it for sale, 2.5 million?
Yes.
Or so? You could have put a park there and come before, you could have just bought it, paused, asked us what we want to do with it. If we couldn't figure it out, you could have sold it again, probably made a profit on it. You could have put a parking lot on it, you know? You could have done a million other things. I say you, not personally.
No, I understand. Look, we're a community of
we could do
7,500
a million
people.
other
Right.
things.
We have a.
But you gotta,
Right.
you gotta put the poker to the developer a little better, through the IDA, through the board, through the zoning process. There's no doubt in my mind. To my knowledge, none of them have hired any of our students in the school in internships. We didn't even ask. You could require that they hire our residents to work there. Somebody mentioned jobs for Ukrainian refugees. You could do almost anything. You could require them to certain safety standards. You could require them green standards. You could require, I don't know who came up with only 10% affordable housing at 80 AMI. It could have been a scale of 20% and say I need from 40 to 80. And they're going to balk and say, I can't do it for that price, or I can't do it because that doesn't fit my financial model. All right, tough. Don't build. How about this? Just don't rezone anything for the next 5 years. There's your moratorium.
So
what I'm saying is, put more pressure on them to listen to this community and hear us out. And I'm asking you just to stop. Enough. Enough's enough. She said it before, you're in a hole, stop digging. Enough.
Okay.
I'm telling you. And I'm a little, with this turnout today, to hear that you're looking to sell a town piece of property to build on it right now, that's a bit of a slap in the face to me right now. And I'm going to take some time to get over that one. I also heard this week, just so, and I don't have this for fact, but John Jock is now entertaining selling that property with the parking lot to expand and build, just like the Chase Bank. I don't know if you've heard that. I don't know. I can't confirm that as fact. That's what I've heard through a nice, reliable source. When's enough? What happens when the Ford dealership says, I'm done selling cars, I want to rezone too?
So those are exactly the questions we ask. What happens? And what would we like to happen? Let's say that were to happen. What's the answer to that? You can't force Jean-Jacques not to
But I don't
sell.
have to rezone them to build a 5-story building. I could say, you're zoned for industry, give me something in that industry. That's what I could tell you to do, because that's where it's zoned now. That's the law now.
And
Everything here has been rezoned.
No, it hasn't.
No.
Literally.
That's not true at all.
You rezoned
literally
Toll
one block.
Brothers?
One block was the only thing that's been
The only
rezoned.
project that we've been talking about that, well, I say that. The Toll Brothers project was a result of rezoning, and that was to bring the Foxwood zoning to that adjacent site, which I think made all the sense in the world, given the fact that the commercial use clearly had no future viability. You might or might not agree, that was the case. The project at LaDuca Auto, the project at 39 Washington, the project that somebody is proposing at 444 Bedford, nobody's changed zoning. We could
And
change zoning going
70
forward.
Wheeler?
Pardon?
70 Wheeler Memorial Plaza was rezoned?
As I described, 70 Memorial, 2017 master plan, we allowed 4 stories in that location, in that one block, as compared to the 3 that existed previously and exist everywhere else. And had we not done that, we'd still be looking at a building that was falling down on top of a mountain of rock. I get it,
Let's change
everything is a challenge, one with it.
Changing zone. I would have argued.
Yeah,
you know,
that is the one change in zoning that's been made, that one block.
Right.
So the only other change,
That's
the
a
only other
major
change that
impact.
we've made since I've been on the board, since 2017, is the recent change that we made to the R2A district to only allow single-family homes on side streets of Bedford Road. That's literally the only change.
I don't say any of this to suggest that we shouldn't change anything, because I think very possibly we should.
Yeah.
I just, what needs to be understood here is, part of what we're seeing is a comparatively sudden interest in doing things in the Village of Pleasantville that has partly to do with the development potential, but partly to do with an unhappy sequence of property owners deciding to sell their property. Honest to God, I went to bed every night for the last 20 years hoping that Bank of New York would keep that 140,000 square foot building mostly empty for the rest of time, but we were definitely on borrowed time, and now we have that challenge.
I struggle with it because that's zoned as office space, and yet we want to sell property to build office space. Why not have them put office space there?
Well, we'll see if anyone wants to. It's, as you might imagine, a very, very big building, and B, a really weird location.
I'm going to struggle with selling property to build office space when there's office space existing. Maybe that could have been the Girl Scout property, that office space. I don't know. It just
Well, that would
seems
have
like,
required a rezoning
one of the problems
there.
I had, and this
Yeah.
doesn't go to the Board of Ed, took 6 weeks to get back to me when I inquired about that project. 6 weeks. So
About the Girl Scout?
about the Girl
Yeah.
Scout project. I had some concerns about it. I thought there should have been suggestions. I had some input. I was looking for some response, and it took quite some time to get back to me. I don't know. I just think.
Yeah, I can't speak to that,
I think
obviously,
we
but-
could have came up with a way, if you asked this community, if they would have passed a bond to buy it, figured out what we could have done with it. There might have been a little more input there, and you could have, I don't know, you could have stirred the pot a little bit better than this, that's all. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Michael Inglis next. And next up, James Russell. If you want to speak, although he offered a comment.
Good evening. My name is Michael Inglis. I live on 40 Willow Street, Pleasantville, New York. I'm also a member of the Conservation Advisory Council, and I thank Nicole for doing a lot of work with us in trying to put in a tree ordinance. I really encourage the board, the entire board, to seriously consider putting in this tree ordinance. I think you said, what do we want Pleasantville to feel? I think we want it to feel green with lovely trees. I think that's an important part of our downtown, our ambience of the village. In regards to that, I also think that in that tree ordinance, which would become part of the zoning code, you could consider putting in cluster development requirements on any large open space parcels that the village has in order to be able to maintain open space. I think that's really important as well.
Can you maybe explain for people who might not know what cluster development is?
My understanding, and I'm not a zoning expert, so don't take that. Cluster development is where a developer has as of right by the zoning, say on a 10-acre parcel, to develop 10 single family 1-acre buildings because they have 10 acres. Then you would actually ask them to cluster those buildings into maybe 2.5 acres and leave the other 7.5 acres green open space forest in order to provide habitat for the plants and animals that we need, that we depend on. You know, we live on this planet only because of the plants and animals that are here with us. I'd also really strongly endorse what Helen asked earlier, that you look at changing the building code to make it more green. I really think that's some area that you could focus on. And then I also endorse strongly John Cunningham's comments earlier about using safety as a reason for a moratorium. In a moratorium, I think you can relook at the zoning across the entire village, and you could selectively reduce the density going forward where we want to. Personally, I think getting that site by the post office developed was probably not a bad thing in the end, but the building that was actually built is not really fitting into Pleasantville in how it looks. Maybe with a fourth story, you could have had a setback with patios up there with trees. You know, you could have done all kinds of different things in order to make that building more attractive. But we could, going forward, we could try to reduce the density in parts of the town. Also, you could increase side yard and front yard setbacks. So when people do develop single-family homes, that they're actually smaller. I think, you know, we need more smaller houses. We don't need these big 5,000 square foot mansions. We need, like, I live in a 2,000 square foot house. I think it's big, right? So those are some of the suggestions I have. The last thing I want to talk about is the traffic, and I think it's the traffic light situation, and I know you're working on that, so good luck with that one. Dealing with the DOT, I don't think you're going to get very far.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. James Russell next, followed by Bob Hughes.
Yes, my name is Jim Russell. I'm a resident of Hawthorne, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. As many of you may know, the town of Mount Pleasant just last Monday voted to approve a new zoning code. Unfortunately, they didn't have a public hearing as is required by New York State law, and if they had, they would have invited representatives from the Village of Pleasantville to be involved in that hearing. They also didn't have a build-out analysis of the areas that were rezoned. This is a large rezoning of previously areas that were zoned as commercial, and now 287 parcels in Valhalla, Thornwood, and Hawthorne have been rezoned to be eligible for residential development, multifamily residential development, which appears to be like apartments, as you may have seen at 500 Commerce Street if you've driven by there. Part of the area is in Thornwood, which is adjacent to Pleasantville. If these parcels are developed, it will certainly have an effect on life in Pleasantville as well as in Thornwood. I think it's important for the folks in the unincorporated areas surrounding Pleasantville and in Pleasantville to keep in touch, to work towards the same goal of trying to prevent overdevelopment in these areas. It's also interesting to keep in touch with people in the town of Newcastle because they've been working in the hamlet of Chappaqua to revitalize the area without residential overdevelopment. Also, we didn't do a build-out analysis as is normally done. I think that's a very important thing. Someone mentioned that before. I think it would behoove the Village of Pleasantville to do a build-out analysis to see what the maximum impact could be. So I look forward to collaboration between the residents of Pleasantville and the surrounding areas so we'll work together to keep our neighborhoods pleasant. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Bob Hughes next, followed by Joanne Homlish.
Hi, I'm Bob Hughes. I've lived in Pleasantville for probably I'm sorry.
Just
I'm sorry.
closer to the mic there, if you
My
would.
name's Bob Hughes. I've lived in Pleasantville for longer than you have, Peter.
I know that.
And seen a lot of changes. I've been involved very much with the schools, with Mariana. We were on the school board. We're on the school board that planned and built the extended Bedford Road School, and new superintendents and a variety of other kinds of activities that school board people do. So my wife teaches piano lessons to Pleasantville kids and has done that for decades. My daughter teaches in Bedford Road School. She teaches music. We are a Pleasantville family. We love Pleasantville. But I'm very concerned about what's happening, particularly about the building behind, next to the post office. I think that's a monstrosity. I don't know how that came about. I'd be very surprised if it was sold out, and I can't imagine how anybody's going to make any money on that. Frankly, I think The Rock was better. Now, I'm also concerned about our taxes, as I think everybody is. And, well, let's put that aside for a second. I also want to bring up a point. There's the bank building on Wheeler. Is that still an active bank?
No, Chase moved out of there. For many years they had 2 branches here. That was a result of their
Yes.
acquisition of Bank of New York. Now they're just on Washington Avenue. The bank is vacant at the corner of Bedford
So at
and
some
Wheeler.
point, that's going to go on the market, I guess.
Well, they're proposing a redevelopment.
Redevelopment.
Right.
Okay.
What is proposed, and it's just the first shot across the bow, is they own the parking lot next door, and they are proposing to build there, build parking underneath, and build residential, convert the offices, which are 4 floors of offices above the bank space, into residential.
Okay. Well,
That's proposed by the family that owns the building and has owned it since the 80s.
okay. I would like to make a crazy suggestion. Why doesn't the village buy it? And why don't they make a recreation building out of it for the wintertime, for young families, young children, pickleball for adults who are there, a small play area, a gym type thing for the young children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that kind of thing would be a real asset for the village. So just a suggestion.
And what would we do with the 4 floors of offices above?
I'm sorry, what?
There are 4 floors of offices above. What might we do with that?
Well, I would think the village might, the building might be rebuilt. For a,
Okay, so,
for a purpose such as that.
Interesting idea. To my knowledge, the current owner is not looking to sell it, but I dare say it would be even less imaginable from an expense standpoint than was the Girl Scout building, but by the same token, it's downtown, and that obviously has some advantages. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you, Bob. Joanne Homlish, followed by Adrian Byrne.
Good evening.
Hey.
I just want to tell the board, as far as I'm concerned, you're all newbies to the village compared to me. I am a graduate of this high school. My children graduated from this high school, and I'm happy to say my grandchildren are now part of BRS. So I have a little history here. And I'll give you a little history, which is what hasn't happened here tonight. Pleasantville has always changed. And I think that, thank you. I can speak up without this.
Just
if you
lean a little
prefer.
closer to the mic and you'll be all set. Yeah.
There will always be development. There will always be changes. But what I think we all need to acknowledge, and why people are here tonight, is how that looks. And I agree with everybody who stood up here tonight and said, the Memorial Plaza building is terrible. It doesn't fit into the community. And as far as out on what's on the Parkway at Depew Street, the first time I saw it, I thought I'd been back in East Berlin at a Soviet Union housing unit. I'm sorry. Just not acceptable. And there are lots of things we can do to prevent that from happening again. Zoning is zoning, and you're right, we can't zone something so people who own property can't profit if they need to sell it. We can't prevent them from selling it. But what we can do, and this has been proposed so many times in the past, and actually I sat on the committee in the early 80s, is that to provide the village with an overall architectural design, something that is acceptable within the zoning regulations, but aesthetically right for this size village. And large industrial-sized buildings just don't cut it. I think the thing that is important, and it's been touched upon, is yes, we need more affordable housing. Over 40 years ago, I administered the Section 8 housing for this village. I had so many slots to fill. They were filled in the first 48 hours. And that hasn't changed. And yes, we have a lot of different type of housing in this village. We have apartments, we have condos, we have co-ops, we have single-family homes. I've lived in all of them at some point in my life. And they're all important for the continuation of this village as a village. So what I am proposing is this. I am asking two things. One, I know at one point zoning and architectural review board were two separate things. I'd like to go back to that. I'd like to expand the power of the architectural review board to really do an overview of what the downtown area should be and develop a 10-year plan and allow that to come to its term and reevaluate again, just like we do with our zoning, with our schools. We always are turning over X number of years to look at what we are doing. And I think the time has come to really do that. The second thing is, I think we need to understand that we need to embrace young people coming into this community. And there are so many that would like to be here, but can't afford it. And apartments aren't always the answer. That's not what they're looking for. My kids lived in apartments in the city. They wanted to come to a home. So I'm going to encourage more multiple family and single family homes to be considered for the village. And I'd like to talk a little about the Girl Scout Center. I actually went to school there as a small child. I would not let my children in that building today. It is a hazard. And to hold on to it is not in our best interest. Yes, we need recreational space. I've sat on the recreation board. Matter of fact, at one point, I sat on so many boards, I went to every meeting every week because I knew if I didn't show up, they'd put me on another board.
This could happen again, Joanne.
So we all need to take a deep breath and think about what we really want and how do we get it, not excluding anybody and not preventing anyone from profiting from what they own if they need to sell it. And then the other thing I'd like to suggest is, and it was brought up earlier in the evening by Nicole Nicolai, we need to have at least one or two more meetings where other people who this time period doesn't work for them.
No problem, we will.
And I think I'd like to see that happen in a very short amount of time. So we have a better idea of what people really want.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Adrian Byrne, followed by Jim Rossopy. Adrian left, okay. Jim visiting from Hawthorne. Can't quite read your last name.
He went.
Jim from Hawthorne.
Okay.
James Russ, yeah.
Eileen Walton, Edgewood.
Thank you. I'm more impressed with Pleasantville than I have ever been before. Thank you to the board. I understand that volunteer work is not paying very well, and you do a lot of work, and we all thank you for that. I'd like to say many views have been expressed that I feel strongly about as well. I won't repeat them. I will say that what I love about Pleasantville the most is community, and that there are little communities in Pleasantville within the larger community. There's the senior center, there's church, there's the Black Cow, there's the bookstore, it's a good community. What I was surprised about here was I felt that sense of community sometimes with the whole group, and a lot of the times I felt a divide. And I was afraid for lack of communication between, or even to say between the villagers and the board. We are really, to coin a phrase, all in this together.
No doubt.
And the function of the board, one of the most important things about a board, is to listen to the villagers and for the villagers to show up as we have shown up and to express ourselves as articulately as we can and as concisely as we can to the board. And I did not feel like the board was always listening. I felt that the board felt an obligation to defend its position. And that's not the way we solve problems. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you
Thanks,
for that.
Eileen. I just want to say I'm sorry you feel that way. I think that what we're trying to do most of all is just take it all in. And I don't think that we have a position. I think each of us probably has our own thoughts on this, but we are taken aback, by this situation in a lot of ways and are still figuring out what the options are and so on. So I'm sorry if any of you feel like we're coming here like this is how we feel that things have to be, because I really don't think that that's true. Just for what...
Yeah, I would also invite anyone to our regular meetings. The typical attendance is 0 from the town. We have a reporter who is there, and then we have 1 or 2 others who are regulars. But on Monday night, it was truly 0. So we are doing our best to listen and to read the room, like to read the conversation based on who we talk to on the sidewalks and the sidelines of soccer games and everything else. But honestly, we're all volunteers coming straight from work and straight from kid drop-offs, doing our best to read police budgets and review all these things, and we would appreciate all of your help in that process.
Did you have a further thought, Bob? Sure. We are. I think. Did these people want to speak? Or?
We certainly appreciate all the work you guys are doing for the community. But I haven't been to a village board meeting in a long time. And the reason I haven't been there is because when you get there, it's a lot of this gobbledygook with minutes and this, that, and the other, and this committee and that, and this zone and this, that, and that.
It is a lot of gobbledygook.
An hour and a half goes by
Yeah.
before anything of interest comes up. All right? So I know
I
on
agree
the
with
school
you.
board, it was the opposite. We were there till 11:30 at night, and many times doing the crap that you have to get done. But we listen to the people first.
So Bob, let me just say, you should take a look at our agendas. Our gobbledygook, the resolutions, the minutes are all at the end of the meeting. Sometimes it's most of the meeting, depending on what's going on, but they're not up front. So.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to.
So that was the last stack of cards we had. Is there anyone else who wanted to speak?
Good evening. My name is Susan Chipungo. I live at 49 Sutton Place. I want to echo a little bit of what Michael, our trustee, said, which was get involved and come. I think you guys have listened to a lot of criticism tonight, a lot of concerns that people are right to have. I've only lived in the village for 3.5 years, but as far as I can see, everything that's been done is really in line with the master plan. I've read through it. I think that the Board of Trustees is doing its very best to follow through with a plan that this community built together. I know that there were public work sessions where your opinions were listened to and brought forth. The notes are in the master plan. And so I find you all in a tough spot, carrying out what the community decided and now finding that maybe we're not happy with what we decided. So I thank you for creating this space to hear people. I also am aware that in the county, there is a massive housing crisis. Houses are going to be built. We can't keep development out of Pleasantville. We have to do our part to be part of the solution to the overall problem that's happening countywide, statewide, nationwide. We have some control, but not a lot. The development that's happening mostly is on private property. We did have a suggestion to create architectural guidelines, but I didn't move to a planned community where I have to get approval for the paint color on my house. I think that's the wrong direction to go, to make them much more strict and uniform. One of the things that we identified that we really like about our village was its eclectic nature, and we don't want to lose that. And so I think we have to weigh some of the things that are coming that we haven't embraced yet, perhaps. I know the railroad was a big change. Couldn't live without it now, but there were people sitting in rooms going, we cannot have a railroad in Pleasantville. Not what I signed up for. So I just encourage folks, like some folks have said tonight, to take a deep breath, get involved and participate, because a lot of this wouldn't feel so out of the blue for some of us. And thank you for listening to each other. I think that's what's really important tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan.
I just want to mention one thing that wasn't brought up tonight. Maybe Peter can do a better job of representing this. But when Susan just talked about the fact that there's a housing shortage, one of the things that we also have to sort of factor into our thinking, and it doesn't mean that we can't have a moratorium, but is that there's a pressure coming on the state level for more centralized housing and multi-unit housing. So there was a proposal on the state level that would have overrid local zoning, would have made local zoning completely mute. You want to give a better rendition of that than...
I'm the legislative chair for the Westchester Municipal
Peter
Officials
fought against
Association,
it,
and so I find myself in this tortured position on a number of occasions, but just to report, last year in the budget process, in the original budget proposal was one of those things they lard into the budget, which has no business being in the budget. It ought to be separate legislation, but they put it in the budget so that people have to vote for it in order to pass the budget. Long story, but what it said was you draw a circle around every train station and major bus station, obviously all along the Long Island Railroad, all along Metro North. You draw a circle around the station of 1 mile across, half mile radius. That would have reached out to the Girl Scout building and automatically would override local zoning to require a minimum of 25 units per acre. And communities would be forced to accept that it would be unable to use density, setbacks, height, or parking as impediments if they would reduce the potential of a given site to less than 25 units per acre. So that was a massively blunt instrument for an understandable goal, but a terrible idea. And we were collectively in Westchester and elsewhere able to fend that off. I can tell you that that was generated by a somewhat unusual alliance of progressive housing folks and not-for-profits, along with developers and builders, on the one hand, seeking to create more opportunity for affordable housing, as we've all heard tonight, and as we know well in a community where, as you likely know, a few years back, $1 million transaction on a house was eye-popping. It is now routine. And we've been in this crazy environment where I just saw the numbers the last quarter, something like 70 some odd percent of Pleasantville house closings went above the asking price. Just a crazy world. But all right, the bottom line there is there are a lot of forces that are out there, on the one hand, trying to create more affordable housing, laudably slow, and we ought to be trying to do that too. And on the other hand, developers and builders who say, no, these local yokels throughout all these communities with their home rule are in the way of progress. Steamroller your local control and allow us to build. So those are two very, very powerful forces, and they are in play not just in New York State, but regionally, and so that's something we're very much focused on. But, further to what Nicole said, it is a concern, and it is contrary to a lot of the goals a lot of us would have about the preservation of our community. That said, I just wanted to touch on the issue that Eileen had mentioned that felt like we weren't listening. So I don't know how many people felt that way. It certainly isn't any of our goal. One of the massive curses but greatest blessings of my now 14 years as your mayor is that I hear it from everybody on both sides. The folks who want lights on fields, perfectly understandable. The folks who live near the fields where the light would go on, nearly hysterical about the potential effect on their quality of life. All of these various changes, and as Michael has already referred, you look back through the history and there have been these moments when something major happened, when Foxwood was created, when what had been the remains of the Hiram Edward Manville estate. All these things were very massive changes. When the whole hillside, Skytop, Brentwood, Summit, Oak Ridge, all of those didn't exist in the 30s and really into the 40s. And you look back to some of those old proposals, and one of them said we should take Lake Street and widen it and straighten out the zigzags because we need to get across to Armonk faster. And you say that, and you can't imagine someone saying that in this world, and thank God they didn't. But I imagine at that point it was Orbeck Dairy was the sort of primary tenant there, and the rest of it hadn't been built yet. So you weren't taking somebody's house. Now every time we propose to do something, to plant a tree in the right-of-way, to widen a sidewalk, to add a sidewalk, someone's ox is gored. And I don't say that to criticize them. Everybody views things through a different lens, and that's what we're here for. So thank you, Susan. Thank you, Eileen. I mean, that's honestly what we're here for, and I have said a lot of times, I'll stay in the room and come to almost any room to talk about anything for as long as you want. That doesn't mean we're always going to agree, but I can say, having done that a gazillion times over a long period of time, everybody ends up with a better sense of the multiple focuses that all come to some decision that we can collectively live with. So. All right, so are there any other speakers? So let me ask for a show of hands. We also invited people to send in questions via email, and we have this many of them. If you're interested in hanging out, we'll try to zip through them in a very top-level way. But if you've had enough at 10 o'clock, we can take these and post them on the web with a short answer. Would that? All right. The majority has spoken. See, we've achieved something. That felt like
I just wanted to take one moment to thank every one of you. I know it's a long night, and it's great. I think having dialogue is what makes us Pleasantville, and what makes us, be able to make a decision like this and make it together. We planned this event to be transparent because we've been hearing a lot on social media that we're not transparent, that there's there's deals going on in the background. There's so many different things that are said that have no merit whatsoever. I think every one of us is trying to be completely transparent here into what we are trying to do. All of our meetings are, obviously you can attend. Our minutes are there if you can't attend. We encourage everyone to get involved in different boards that are available. Even right now, there's 2 of us that are up for re-election, and the next coming up in March. This is the time. If you are passionate about this and you want to make that change, I mean, a lot of people have a lot of, this is what I would like to see. But this is the time. If you do want to get involved, this is your chance. We're trying to do our best. We are your neighbors. I've gone to school with some of your children. I'm sure in one way or another, we've all crossed paths. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to be one Pleasantville. So just keep that in mind when, you're hearing different rumors and you're hearing things. And in reality, just talk to us. We're here. We're always open. Agreed. You're totally right on that.
What if we put some copies like in the Black Cow and a couple other places? Very expensive and very. We did that. Yeah, Yeah, exactly. So. The library.
We did do that, yeah.
So, we have a newsletter now. Thank you, Courtney, who's in the back of the room, who's a major force behind it. We don't mail it to every house. We post it online. We push it out to our email list. We put paper copies in various places, but it costs, if we do it 3-4 times a year and mail it to every house, it's like $20,000. So the question is that ultimately a win? Not that we can't do it, we can. Right? Yeah. All right, so that, to be continued, that discussion, yes.
So I think another challenge is that, we meet twice a month, and it's hard to know which issue is of the level that would qualify for mailing it to 2,417 households, because there's a lot of issues that come up all the time, and we meet every second and fourth Monday. So it's difficult to make that call,
Kat, I like the idea of allowing sign up. We've done something since I came on that I cared about in terms of transparency, which is to, on a monthly basis, we have a real English write-up of what we're working on, a summary that Eric in the back writes. That goes on social media and everything. It shouldn't be too, well, I always say this and then I create work for our administrative staff, but it seems like something we could look at to allow people to sign up to get a physical copy if that would help them.
Yeah, we had cards that got
cards
dropped
at
off for
the
this.
senior centers, but we also dropped some paper copies of the newsletter down at the senior center. But again, it's a worthwhile idea. We can explore that for sure. So, all right, we've taken up enough of your time. Thank you all. This isn't the last occasion, and clearly we'll engage perhaps at a couple of different times for the reasons already described. Have a good night.